Ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press, and it is good to see so many members of the public, so thank you for coming, who have joined us today either in person or watching via the live stream to this meeting of the Highways and Transport Committee at New Shire Hall in Alconbury. The council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and post to social media during the meeting. Can I ask though that everybody turns their mobile phone to silent or vibrate while the meeting is taking place? There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, please leave by the nearest marked fire exit and assemble in the car park. Could the Democratic Services Officer, Nick, notify the committee of the appointments of chair and vice chair to this committee?
Thank you. This item's to note that on the 16th of May, full council appointed Councillor Alex Beckett as the chair of the Highways and Transport Committee and Councillor Neil Shaler as the vice chair for the municipal year 2024-25.
Thank you very much, Nick. So I guess that means you're stuck with me and Neil for another year. Would the Democratic Services Officer please report any apologies for absences?
Thanks, Chair. Yep, there were apologies from Councillor Nethsinger and Councillor Wilson is as a substitute. Councillor Hay and Councillor Criswell is here as a sub, and Councillor Dupre and Councillor Slatter is substituting.
Brilliant. I think we're still waiting on Councillor King, who hopefully will on his way and be here soon, and Councillor Bird, but we'll keep going anyway. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or non-statutory disclosable interests? Yes, Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. I just need to declare my membership of Huntingdon Town Council when we come to discuss the 20-mile-an-hour policy. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor French.
Thank you. I am the chairman of MAT, Smart Area Transport Strategy.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor French. Anybody else? No? Okay. Brilliant. We are asked to approve the minutes of the last committee meeting, which was held on the 30th of April 2024 as an accurate record. Can I ask if any member disagrees with the accuracy of the meeting minutes? No? Okay. I see no objections to the minutes, so I will sign those as approved. On that basis, committee members, are you happy to approve the minutes subject? Oh, sorry. Do officers or members have any comments on the action log? Councillor Daunton.
Yes, please, Chair. I have two comments under 203 and 211. Under 203, the item on a member briefing on Geist and how it was being used, could I just check when the recording on that will be available? Because not everybody was able to attend. I think there was some issue with the circulation list for that. So I don't know whether the recording has been issued. And then on 211, the session with town and parish councils, has that been arranged for August? If not, normally town and parish, well, certainly parish councils don't normally meet in August, so I don't know whether the date has already been arranged or could be reconsidered.
Let me hand over to David Allett, Director.
Thanks, Councillor Daunton. The recording of the Geist workshop is available. I can helpfully recirculate that and maybe put it as a link in the action log on the Town and Parish Council session to talk about the capital programme. That's not yet been scheduled in the diary, but we were looking to get it in for August, but we'll certainly seek availability from Town and Council Parish reps in advance to make sure that all are able to attend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Daunton. Does anybody else have anything on the action log? No. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we've received 6 applications to address the committee today, and 4 of those are relating to agenda item 8, the proposed 20-mile-an-hour speed limit zone in Huntingdon. So welcome everybody and thank you. And 1 relating to agenda item 9, East-West Rail consultation. Those have been accepted, and the applicants will be invited to speak at the start of those items. The 6th question was submitted but not accepted because it was not relevant to the agenda items of today's meeting, and a written response will instead be provided. Item 5 is a key decision on the Active Travel Fund for extension and will be presented by the Complex Infrastructure Group Manager, Nicola Young. Nicola, good to see you, and over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The report outlines funding awarded for 3 schemes under the Active Travel Fund for Extension. £1.1 million of funding was awarded by Active Travel England for 3 schemes, including development of detailed design for widening the existing shared use path between Alconbury and Huntingdon Station, a feasibility study into active travel routes at the Thrapston Road, Huntingdon Road, Church Road roundabout, and for the construction of a new shared use path along Duxford Road, Whittlesford. The Active Travel Fund for Extension schemes support Cambridgeshire's active travel strategy for the quality provision of active travel infrastructure in Cambridgeshire. Through enabling and encouraging more people to travel by active travel modes, the number of journeys made by private vehicle can be reduced, contributing to the Council's target to achieve net zero by 2045. Entering a grant funding agreement with the Combined Authority will allow the Council to continue developing and delivering these active travel schemes. There are 5 recommendations set out in the report.
Thank you very much, Nicola. We have 2 local members for these schemes. That's Councillor Gardner and Councillor MacDonald. Would either of you two like to speak first? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think there's a slight correction, I think, because I don't think I am a local member for where this particular route is going. So I just want to make sure that I'm correct. I believe the scheme is only going as far as Alconbury Weald, in which case it does not fall within the Alconbury and Kimbolton division. That falls within the Warboys and Stukely division. So I just want that clarified, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Nicola, are you able to clarify that?
Yeah, I think that's correct. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologise for the confusion there, Councillor Gardner, with divisional boundaries. Do any other members have any questions they would like to ask or any comments? Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks, Chair. It was just 2 observations or comments around the Whittlesford-Duxford one. It is an active travel scheme, but it's also at the same time, as the officers will know, very much a connectivity path between students who are living maybe in Sawston, need to get to Whittlesford station. There's a path at the moment from Sawston up to Whittlesford, but at the moment it doesn't continue down towards the station unless it's on the road. So there is a benefit, I think, in that. Not necessarily looking for an answer today, but the connectivity also from Duxford, there's a much smaller scheme planned as a crossing for the A505, so that people can cross more safely from Duxford Village to Whittlesford Station. So that's just an observation, and hopefully that scheme, which I understand is a separate scheme, would come along in the not too distant future after that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Nicola, do you want to answer that at all, or?
I'm not sure there was too much to come back on there other than the observation, but yeah, thank you for noting the other scheme as well.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. On page 20 in paragraph 2.5, it refers to further consultation on the comments to Huntingdon Town Bridge modal filter over summer 2024. Now, I understand from the project manager that the feasibility study won't be done until the end of August 2024. So my question is, what consultation is being proposed this summer? And would it not be more sensible to get the reactions of the Huntingdon Town Council, the Godmanchester Town Council, and local district and county councillors before it goes out to public consultation? Thank you.
That is a very good point. Nicola.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the intention is first to engage with the town councils, district councils and local members in the area, which we'll be looking to do later in the summer. I imagine it will be September now, given August and summer holidays. There is the closure on the bridge expected in early September for maintenance work as well. So we'll be reviewing that period as well. And then following consultation with the town councils, we will then review a wider consultation with other stakeholders and public.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. I warmly welcome what I see at paragraph 3, 3.1 and 3.2, as local member for Hinchinbrook. I think it's excellent that we've managed to progress this. Pity that I know some other schemes have had to be withdrawn, but I think it's good to see active travel being implemented in some of the rural areas as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. Yes, anybody else? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, following on with regard to the active travel route to Alconbury Weald, further down in 3.4, it does say about allowing short journeys from surrounding local villages in Huntingdon. So I'm assuming you're looking at Alconbury itself and Alconbury Western. Can you tell me how you're looking for residents in those areas to connect in with the Alconbury active travel route from Alconbury Weald into Huntingdon? Because at the moment they can't do so.
So those studies are feasibility and early design studies for that route. So that will be considered as part of the feasibility, but happy to report back when we've got a bit more detail around that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the report, Nicola. I'm broadly in agreement with the recommendation. I'm not against it. It's just really one question, and it's I know the chairman doesn't like things being parochial, but it's just really touching on Councillor Sanderson mentioned rural. I chair the bus cycle working group at East Cams and have done it's run for 5 years. And reading, I went back and last night looked at the LC whip, and in terms of that, back in 2022, it said we'd be looking at a refresh of that. I just wondered when that is, because we've done a lot of, just say being we've done a lot of work with Sustrans to get feasibility studies and everything else, and it would be useful to see how we can get those fed in to getting nearer to being actually actioned rather than just being a hopeful aspiration at the moment. So that's really my question. But so I'm in agreement with the paper. It's just how we can refresh going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicola, did you want to say something about that? And if not, I'll come back myself.
Yeah, I'm not sure on when the LC whip refresh is due to happen, but we can take that one away and have a look at it.
No, I think that is an important point that Councillor Sharp raises, because I don't think it's just that project. I know there's a number that are looking for inclusion into a refreshed LC whip, and we did make a commitment to keep them updated with new projects. I think the other thing I would really welcome is the LC whip in each area has its kind of highlighted top priority schemes. I think it'd be really useful if we had an overarching one of those as well, so we could always understand, where the bucket is on these and where the schemes fall in the list. But maybe that's something we can come to at a broader discussion around active travel and the LC whip. Does anybody else have? Oh, Councillor Slatter.
Yeah, I don't want to seem rude as a visitor, but Appendix 1, the Equality Impact Assessment, I found a bit weird. Now, obviously, there are important things to look at, but we seem to have a string of repetitive statements and a gaping gap about disability. Now, last week we celebrated the Disability Consultative Panel, which I served on for many years on the City Council, Cambridge City, which has now unfortunately been wound up. But that did a great deal of good, and it was particularly looking at planning applications and often the public realm, the hard surfaces, that sort of thing. We have very little detail in this paper about the impact or the possible problems for various sorts of sensory or mobility disabilities of this sort of scheme. And I am puzzled by that. I know there is talk of having a better disability consultative setup in the county, and I think this appendix does rather illustrate the need, because to be spending time about gender reassignment and so on, but not actually talking about the detail for disability, it puzzles me.
Thank you, Councillor Slatter. Nicola, do you want to say anything about the disability assessment?
Yeah, thank you for those comments. I'm happy to take them away and have a further look at the equality impact assessment. The scheme that the equality impact assessment is referring to is the one that's proposed to go through to construction. But with all schemes, we will continue to review impact on equality and protected characteristics throughout the feasibility design stages as well. So as we're working through the detailed design at the moment for that scheme, that's something we'll continue to focus on.
Thank you very much. Do I have any other members on this topic? Anybody else? No. Okay. Brilliant. Sorry, let me find my page. Changed over. Okay. Sorry, we've missed in the briefing the vote on this one, but I believe I'm not hearing any. Actually, let's go through again very quickly. So the committee is recommended to note progress with active travel 4 schemes, agree the council accepts 1.1 million of funding from the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority for the delivery of the schemes under 84 extension, delegate authority to the Executive Director for Place and Sustainability in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Highways and Transport Committee and the Section 151 Officer to enter into a grant funding agreement with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. D, approve the ongoing development of the design, including the consultation with stakeholders. And E, delegate authority to the Executive Director of Place and Sustainability in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Highways and Transport Committee to agree the procurement route for the 84 extension programme using existing contractual framework. I don't see anybody disagreeing, but is everyone happy if I take that by affirmation? Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. In that case, then we move on to item 6, which is another key decision on the procurement of the electric vehicle infrastructure, and it will be presented by our Transport Strategy Manager, Chris Portney. Chris, good to have you, and over to you when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, committee. Cambridgeshire County Council recently submitted a business case to government with colleagues and partners at the Combined Authority to access funding for electric vehicle chargers. This paper before you provides an update and seeks delegations to enter into grant funding agreements with the Combined Authority and also to commence procurement following the full scoping and production of a specification and contract documents, with the results of the procurement to reported back to this committee for a final decision. Supporting the move to electric vehicles is an important part of achieving our corporate strategic ambitions and will contribute to a reduction in carbon emissions from transport. A summary in the paper is set out at 2.5, which positions this specific project and work in the context of other work on electric vehicles at the moment. The Local Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Fund was announced by government and an allocation made to the Combined Authority to cover Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. The grant funding is specifically focused on delivering on-street charge points to support residents without off-street parking, delivering local, low-power chargers, and to lever in private sector investment into charging infrastructure. Requirement of the funding is that the authorities collaborate to secure economies of scale, and officers have been working closely with colleagues at Peterborough and the Combined Authority to develop this work. £5.4 million has been provisionally allocated to the Combined Authority, and a strong business case has been developed and submitted. If this is approved, funding will be released and the development of a detailed procurement and contract information can be prepared, and a tender sought for a commercial partner to enter into a contract and deliver charge points across the county through a long-term contract. This funding has potential to deliver a step change in the level of charging infrastructure across Cambridgeshire. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you for bringing forward this really important work of bringing all of these charge points forwards. Members, do I have any questions or comments? Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed this is a very large item, and I'm just a little bit concerned that of two of the items, it's delegating authority to the Executive Director of Place and Sustainability. And I wonder whether that means we're just giving away any control we had over these issues. And I also notice actually that there's 6 cases of this delegated authority to the Executive Director and the Chair and Vice Chair. And I wonder if that isn't sort of taking away authority from this committee that should remain with this committee.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hunt. I think personally I would disagree with that one, that obviously for the expedience of being able to execute things, we can't bring absolutely everything back to committee each time. I hope there's sufficient information and detail in this papers, though, that you should be happy with the decision that would be delegated down. Are there any particular issues that you have concerns with on the delegation?
No, it was more of a general concern that we're losing control of what's going on. But if I do accept that there's a lot of detail in the papers.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Frank Jordan, do you want to come in as well?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hunt. So the proposed delegations and recommendations B and C to enable us to move the project forward, but I would draw attention to recommendation D, which is clearly outlining that final approval to actually enter into any contracts and proceed with the project is to come back to committee. So the actual control is back with the committee in terms of whether we proceed or not. So the delegations to enable us to progress the project to that stage, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. That helps a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I was very reassured by this paper and think it's an excellent idea. I may have missed it, but just how much money will Cambridgeshire County Council get? I see the amount granted was for the government, for PCs, for Peterborough and Cambridgeshire. And have I missed it, or what's the answer?
Good point, Councillor Wilson. Chris, do you know the formula off the top of your head?
I do not, Chair, but I think the decision on that amount of money, the amount of money has been done by demographics. So each authority across England has and Wales, I think, has got delegated funding. The exact split between Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is, I think that is the question you're asking, is to be agreed following confirmation of the funding being allocated, I think.
Sorry, Councillor Wilson as well, that a lot of our funding goes via that route, all of our maintenance funding as well, and there is usually a formula that splits it between Cambridgeshire and Peterborough.
I accept entirely that there is a formula, and if it's based on demographics and that's something out of our control, then that's it. But I'm tended to agree with Councillor Hunt here. It would be good for the committee to know what the breakdown was going to be before we commit to doing the work. But thank you.
I do agree there, Councillor Wilson. It would have been good to put that in the papers. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Broadly in agreement again with the recommendation. And 2 points really, and I'm not trying to be Mr. Grumpy today. But I know we had a paper on this back in December and then one in March. I'm not the officer might be able to. I'm not sure where we've gone in that time, because I would have hoped we would have progressed more, but there may be issues that had needed to be overcome. And as I understand it, the pilot is for 10 per district, or that was the original. And then the final thing, which I can't see in the paper, I know we had certainly there was a member briefing, which I attended. I think we had around parishes using parish car parks and things like that, which is a good idea, although I know in the village I live in, we couldn't take that up because of issues over security of the village hall if we kept the car park open all the time. So I'd be interested to know if that's is alongside this, or whether it's in something that's going to come later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. And you have called upon my passion project of the cable crossing over and making sure that happened. One of my friends last night was on at me about that one as well, so I was going to ask the question myself. So thank you for doing that in advance. But Chris,
it's a good, I agree with the whole principle of it. I think it's
a
a great idea, but it's as I say, I think
yes,
we need to get on with it.
Chris, are you able to give us any update on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I think direction noted and welcomed as by officers. I think thank you for speed on that one. I just draw your attention back to 2.5 in the report, because there is a lot of work happening on electric vehicles at the moment, and this specific paper in front of you today it does focus on the grant funding and the charge points for residential areas, but the other pieces of work are also shown on there, including the gully pilot, which we're planning to brief back to members quite shortly, actually, Chair, on that one. So yeah, we'll be planning to bring some information back to you very soon.
That would be very good to hear. I'm sure the entire committee is very keen on that one. I know I have a lot of residents that don't have the ability to off-street charging, and how important it is to them to be able to have some sort of solution, or what a barrier it actually is to EV adoption, not being able to charge if you don't have off-street parking, especially given the rates of electricity at the commercial points. Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a brief point. I mean, overall, I really welcome the rollout of this, and my residents will welcome it. I raised at Transport and Infrastructure Committee, where I represent South Cambs, that when we're doing the procurement, the commercial charging rates are, capped or agreed at a reasonable level, because to give you an example, to charge at home would be 7 or 8 pence per kilowatt hour. Some of these commercial charges are 70 to 80 pence per kilowatt hour, and so it's to make sure that residents aren't being ripped off when this happens. But I know officers are on the case on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And yeah, I think the model we're choosing here allows us some control in that. But Chris, did you want to say anything about the control that we have over the rates?
I was just going to again welcome the point. I think it's a really good point around making it, making what we're doing here attractive to residents as well. So we, the procurement of this and pulling the, I know it's slightly tedious perhaps, but getting the specification right is really important. And getting the commercial balance of the contract right is really important. So we need to make sure that we've got the right advice to support us with that and assist us in pulling together something which is really attractive to the market, so we can get a good provider, but also works really well for residents as part of the whole electric vehicle point. So yes, very much welcome that point. Yeah, thank you.
It is also really important to say there that obviously a lot of our least affluent, most struggling residents are the ones that won't have access to off-street charging. They're the sort of people that live in flats often that don't have that off-street charging infrastructure. So it is vitally important that going forwards, where we do have public infrastructure, it is at a rate, as Peter points out, that is equitable and fair for everyone to be able to use it, and good there. Councillor Shaler.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I too support the project, and want to associate myself with the comments also from Councillor MacDonald. We've both been dealing with this on the Transport and Infrastructure Committee as well, and which is some of the reasons why the kind of timing of this works in the way that it does. There are some interesting figures here, though. I would question that transport is the largest emitter of CO2 in our region in Cambridgeshire. There is quite a lot of information over the last few years that shows that ploughing peat, tilling actually produces more CO2 than transport. And I recognize these figures from about 3 years ago from the Combined Authority, actually. And I wonder if I could ask that there'd be a bit of an update on that. And in general, the transition to electric vehicles is not primarily about emissions initially. It actually increases the emissions because of the weight and the new vehicles and that sort of thing. But as they're used, obviously it brings it down, and we're talking about a third reduction in emissions. As we transition to more sustainable means of creating electricity, obviously that will continue to drop. The points, though, are well made about health in terms of the air quality, especially in urban environments where currently it's some of the worst in the country in our area. So that is important. And then to come back to Councillor MacDonald's points, a lot of this is about access and equality, where you don't have off-street parking. So that it's a very important point for the reasons. And this also varies across our region. There are areas that have fewer off-street parks and those who have more. So I very much applaud the paper. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shaler. Councillor Daunton.
Yes, I'd like to take up the point that Councillor Sharp made earlier on about the access for parish councils, and the notice that has gone out to parish councils recently about installing EV chargers on parish council land. and broadening that out, at what point and how will residents more generally be informed about this scheme, this work, the background work that's going on, and how that will manifest itself across the county?
Thank you, Councillor Daunton. Chris, did you want to come on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think at the moment the focus has been on submitting the business case and securing the money. Should we be successful in securing that money, then we will implement a comms plan, a robust comms plan developed to draw in all stakeholders, because what we're proposing here is quite complex. It's far reaching in terms of impact across the county, with installations and everything happening, you know, for quite a period. So yes, that will be in hand, I think, and we can bring further details of that back to members. I mean, we'll be looking to have member engagement as well as residents and stakeholders at the right time.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you very much. So in relation to that, the correspondence that's gone out to parish councils already about the opportunity to put charges on parish council land, how does that fit with this broader scheme?
I may need to take that one away, Chair, and bring that one back, if that's okay.
Yes, and I think actually, I think it would be worthwhile us bringing back a perhaps briefing on all of the work that is going on EV charging and the number of grants that are available to different people. Well, I didn't actually realize until a friend of mine raised it with me last night that the cable crossing over trial, there is a central government pot of money available for that one to subsidise the cost of cable crossing over trials. I think there's so many of these grants going on in different places. It would be really useful if we could pull that together at some point into some sort of document or website, so that our residents as well can understand the myriad of different routes going on, all of the different funding streams and options, and just give clarity there, because this is obviously an area that is evolving at pace, and there is a lot of new stuff coming on all the time that, yes, I'm not sure everyone is aware of, so that would be really helpful. Do I have anybody else on this? Councillor Sharp.
I think just to add, you know, I agree with what you've said about the different sources, and obviously with the new government, there may be change, you know, more things or whatever changes coming out. So yeah, I'd agree that a briefing on that would be useful.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Can we take that away as an action? Thank you very much, officers. Do we have anybody else? Okay, if not, in that case, then the committee is recommended to note the range of work that is being undertaken locally to accelerate the rollout of electric vehicle charging infrastructure and specific objectives and purposes of the local electric vehicle infrastructure fund. Delegate authority to the Executive Director of Place and Sustainability in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Highways and Transport Committee to sign any grant funding agreements to draw down allocations from Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority. C. Delegate authority to the Executive Director of Place and Sustainability in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Highways and Transport Committee to commence procurement for the delivery of the project. And D. Note that the report to seek final approval to commence the project and enter into contracts will be presented to a future meeting of the Highways and Transport Committee. I don't see any dissent. Can I take that by affirmation? No. Brilliant. Thank you very much, all. Brilliant. Item 7 is a key decision on the March Area Transport Study Programme, and it will be presented by the Complex Infrastructure Group Manager again, Nicola Young. Nicola, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The report provides an update on the next stages to deliver schemes relating to the March Area Transport Study. The report outlines the conclusions of the full business case 2 that has been undertaken for schemes included in the study, and provides recommendations to enable delivery of 2 construction projects and a further business case development. The proposed schemes to be taken forward are junction improvements for St Peter's Road and 20-foot Road March, along with the development of a full business case for the Northern Industrial Link Road. The Combined Authority has allocated £7 million of funding for this next stage of work, and their Transport and Infrastructure Committee yesterday approved the drawdown of this funding. The paper recommends that the County Council enter a grant funding agreement with the Combined Authority to deliver these schemes and commences procurement and awards contracts for professional services and construction work. There are 6 recommendations set out in the report.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Now, I hope I'm right this time in saying that Councillor French is the local member for this one. So if so, Councillor French, would you like to speak or say something first?
Yes, thank you. I'm looking at the area. It's March North Wattlesey, that is my county division. March South and Rural is my town and district, and I live in Whittlesey South. Don't ask how that all works, but that's. I welcome this paper. I've been working on the MAT scheme since 2018. We had quick wins, medium and long term. The quick wins were done last year, and we're looking forward to this. As you're well aware, there's a lot of work going on in transformation of Broad Street. Once that is complete, which should be completed in October, we then want to move on to the other schemes. And with all the regeneration in March, it is vital that we actually have these schemes. And I would like to say thank you to all the officers who have been working on this over the last 6 years. They have put a tremendous amount of work in this, so I hope that you will support it.
Thank you very much, Councillor French. Do I have any other members? Councillor Sharp.
Just very briefly, totally support this. Like Councillor MacDonald, Councillor Shaler, and Councillor Sanderson was there yesterday. I'm the East Cambs rep on the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, and I think this got approved unanimously yesterday. So, totally in support of it.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I'm glad they went through yesterday after the previous attempt. Councillor MacDonald.
Just very briefly, Chair, I'm glad Alan and expressed the fact that it was unanimous yesterday, which it was. We were a bit confused when Councillor Nawaz came to the Guildhall. I think maybe Jan was also confused. We kind of fell off our chair when he wasn't keen on receiving the money, and I was trying to get the 7 million for South Cambridgeshire if March didn't want it. So I'm pleased to hear that March do still want it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Do I have anybody else? Councillor Shaler.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm actually quite proud of the way that the Combined Authority and the County Council have supported March in this. It's a lot of money, actually, but over quite a long period of time. And I would urge people to see these schemes in the round. These are not isolated. They connect across the county, and we should look at our active transport in the same way. Adding in these links, it becomes a gestalt. When you add two together, it's more than the sum of the parts, and I think that's what we're looking at here. Previously, of course, still ongoing and still a bit of a mess in the centre of March is the Broad Street, but hopefully by October this is going to be finished and it will be a boon for footfall and shopping in the centre, and I hope especially the opposition will support those kinds of projects that we have in the other parts of the county going forward. But it was an interesting time on the Transport and Infrastructure Committee yesterday. So I'm glad that we have all of our ducks in line now. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shaler. Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to tender my apologies for arriving late. I had another meeting that overran beyond my control. And I just wanted to make the observation that the discussions that were referred to earlier proves that the Conservative Party is a broad church, and we don't whip our people. So that's a point in our favour, I think.
Thank you very much. Right, everybody. Yes, I think all of us would be very happy to receive this amount of money, but I'm very glad that it's going to March for the work there. I don't see any future discussion, so let me just read out our recommendations again. Note the conclusion of the full business case 2 for the March Area Transport Study, or MAT schemes. B, subject to approval by the Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority, which has been approved. Agree that the council accepts 7 million to progress the construction of the 20-foot road and St Peter's Road junction and develop full business case 3 for the Northern Industrial Link Road. C, delegate authority to the Executive Director of Place and Sustainability in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Housing and Transport Committee and the Section 151 officer to enter into a grant funding agreement with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. D, approve the ongoing development of the design for the Northern Industrial Link Road, including in consultation with stakeholders. E, approve the commencement of procurement 4. 1, the provision of construction starting March 2025 and extension periods, and 2, the provision of the professional services to develop the full business case 3 for the Northern Industrial Link Road starting in September 2024 and extension periods, and F, delegate authority to the Executive Director of Place and Sustainability in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Highways and Transport Committee to award and execute a contract for 1, the provision of construction starting in March 2025 extension periods, and 2, for the provision of professional services to develop the full business case 3 for the Northern Industrial Link Road extension periods. Brilliant. I don't see anybody disagreeing here, so I'm really hoping this might be unanimous. Is it unanimous? Yes. Okay, brilliant. Passed. Thank you very much, everyone. Right, how are we doing on time? Brilliant. Okay, this is the one that hopefully I think everyone's come for, which is the item 8, which is a report on the proposed implementation of 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in Huntingdon. It will be presented by the Policy and Regulations Officer, Gary Baldwin. Is it Gary or is it Jeremy? Is it you? Sorry, probably by Jeremy Smith, and I will invite members of the public to address the committee. Actually, Jeremy, do you want to introduce this first, and then we'll go for questions?
With apologies for Sonia Hansen, who is currently has COVID and therefore is not in person. And so I will be presenting today, and also the item on the A1421. This paper details the responses to the statutory consultation on the proposals to introduce a traffic regulation order to implement 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in Huntingdon. And committee is asked to consider the representations made in the statutory public notice period and to approve the speed limit as published. The proposals are part of the Council's initiative to introduce 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in suitable areas in the interests of road safety and encouraging more sustainable travel choices. Huntingdon Town Council originally proposed 3 areas outside schools to have 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. County Council officers assessed this proposal and concluded that the 3 areas were not extensive enough to have any significant impact on vehicle speeds and driver behaviour. The 25-mile-an-hour speed limit therefore proposed is for most residential streets in Huntingdon, which has a population of around 25,000 people. So that's the area covered, has that population. The proposals exclude the main through routes, such as the Ring Road, Ermine Street and Brampton Road, which will remain at their current speed limits. And roads wholly in the industrial areas of the town will also remain at their current speed limits. The scheme drawing in Appendix 1 to this report shows the roads that would be 20 miles an hour if the order is approved. 42 responses were received in the statutory notice period. These included 26 objections, 15 expressions of support, and 1 neutral response. Appendix 5 to the report details the 42 individual representations that were received. A summary of the main issues raised by respondents and officer responses to them can be found in Appendix 3. The main objections include the perceived ineffectiveness of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, increases in pollution and noise, etc., lack of enforcement, lack of public support, and opposition to a blanket approach. The Cambridgeshire Police indicated support in principle and raised no objection to proposals. They did, however, raise issues around the likelihood of poor compliance on certain roads. The response of the police can be found in Appendix 4 to the report. Huntingdon Town Council have considered the proposals a number of times, most recently at a meeting on the 16th of May. The position agreed by the Town Council as set out in the minutes of that meeting is that, firstly, Huntingdon Town Council believes the consultation process was flawed and should be rerun. Secondly, the Town Council prefers the original 3 areas outside schools. The schools should be 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, and noting that this relates to the initial proposals from the Town Council that I mentioned previously. Thirdly, that the Huntingdon Town Council, if the second option isn't possible, does prefer the scheme as proposed to no scheme. And fourthly, the Huntingdon Town Council would like a review of any scheme in 24 months. The recommendation to committee is the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit should proceed, as it would improve road safety with lower speeds resulting in fewer and less severe collisions and encourage more sustainable travel choices. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Now, we have a number of questions on this one, and that is great to see. The first question is from John Morris, but I don't believe John can be here today. But I believe, Nick, you have the question. You're going to read it out on John's behalf.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this question is from John Morris, the leader of the Hunts Walking and Cycling Group, and it's as follows. Hunts Walking and Cycling Group wants to see safer streets and is supportive of 20-mile-per-hour zones in residential areas in Huntingdon. If a child or grandchild runs out from behind a parked car and is hit by a vehicle travelling at 30 miles per hour, they will be 8 times more likely to end up in a mortuary than if they are hit at 20 miles per hour. This fact alone provides a compelling reason to support 20-mile-per-hour zones in residential and built-up areas. Mike Goff was a founder member of Hunts Walking and Cycling Group. Mike was in a collision with a white van in March this year whilst riding his bicycle and died from his injuries. The driver of the van was arrested on suspicion of causing death by careless driving. 2 days before he died, Mike wrote on his Facebook page, "Sadly, another one. How many more will be killed here before something is done about it?" Introduce 20-mile-per-hour zones in residential streets in Huntingdon can help reduce the number of deaths and injuries on our road in Cambridgeshire. We are pleased to see the officer recommendation in this report and urge members of this committee to support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you very much. Question 2, I believe, is from Mr. Connor Dignam. Connor, would you like to come forward and address the committee? Connor, you have 3 minutes to address the committee, and the light in front of you will turn amber when you have 30 seconds to go, but over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to give a view on this proposal as a resident of Hertford Road. My family have lived on Hertford Road now for almost 13 years. It is the section of Hertford Road on the inner ring road, running from the 3 Tons pub in the town centre down to the end of the junction with Nursery Road, where the now disused fire station sits. This section of Hertford Road is lined on both sides by residential properties and where the front doors and gates are very close to the road itself. This is a busy residential street where the road is used as a cut-through by lots of traffic coming from the outer ring road. Since the opening of the new A14 bypass and new link road at Mill Common, there is no question that there is a much larger volume of traffic coming down Hertford Road each day. Buses and articulated lorries also use this small road every day. At peak time, it's packed with traffic, bumper to bumper, often lining the street. Outside of peak, it is still used as a cut-through road, and some of the traffic drives through at excessive speed, particularly in an area where there are many families with young children. There are no speed restrictions or signs on this stretch of Hertford Road, and too many drivers race down at high speed. My wife is disabled and uses a walking stick. Sometimes we can be crossing this road when it looks clear and a car will come tearing around the corner at high speed. It can be a dangerous and difficult road to cross, and it is not a main road. Speeding drivers at speeds, I would say, of 50 to 60 miles an hour come down the road frequently. A few years ago, one driver using Hertford Road as a cut-through lost control of his car and ploughed into my car and 2 others parked in the street. My car was a write-off, but we were all just very relieved that no one had been getting in and out of their car at that time, as that would have been a serious injury or death. I believe that introducing a 20-mile-per-hour zone in the stretch of Hertford Road would improve safety and quality of life for residents. I'm joined here today by a number of other residents of Hertford Road who feel the same. Traffic might be encouraged to take the main ring road rather than this shortcut, and speeding motorists would at least be encouraged to slow down. There are plans to convert the old fire station into housing on Hertford Road, and unless 20-mile-per-hour speed restrictions are introduced to stop it, then our road will become even more polluted, even more noisy, and even more dangerous. To prevent this, myself and other residents have approached our local councillors about having this stretch of Hertford Road turned into a 20-mile-per-hour zone, and we are very supportive of that. I think slower traffic in residential streets has got to be a good thing. It will improve the quality of life and potentially save lives. So I hope the council will support this measure. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the residents of Hertford Road. Good to see you here. Thank you for coming along. The next question we have is from Councillor Nathan Hunt. Nathan, do you want to come forward? And again, you've got 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here today on behalf of both myself and Councillor Harvey, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, but who shares a stance with me on this issue. We both represent Huntingdon East at the District Council, which covers Hertford and parts of the Huntingdon South Division. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I don't think anyone believes how the early stages of the consultation were handled was ideal. There needs to be a lot of review, a lot of dissection, and a lot of brutal honesty to work out exactly what went wrong with the early stage of this process and ensure we don't see a repeat of that situation. And I don't think anyone would disagree with that. However, what I'm interested in today is moving forward. Councillors, I'm fully in support of the proposals and Councillor Beckett's amendment in front of you today. They are an opportunity to make a positive difference to Huntingdon, and they represent a reasonable, proportionate step to making the town safer. I want to remind you that we are talking about real lives here today and the safety of real people. I want to remind you of the successful scheme in Godmanchester and the fact that at least one person is alive today who wouldn't otherwise be without that scheme. There was an anecdote passed on to me by one of my district colleagues about an incident where a pedestrian fell onto the road in front of a vehicle. And thanks to the reduced speed, a collision was narrowly avoided. That scheme is still relatively new, but there is now one more person alive today because of it. One more person to be there for their family. Tragically, recent events in Huntingdon have also shown us the opposite. The scheme in front of you is a proportionate way to help protect residents and road users of all kinds. Some have described the scheme as a blanket, so the proposal is a blanket scheme, though I would disagree with that characterization. Major and through routes, as we've heard, are excluded from the proposal, and the original proposal was updated and improved thanks to work done by officers and representations from Councillor Harvey, Councillor Wilson, and myself. Within my ward, there are multiple instant black spots that would be made significantly safer with the introduction of this scheme, and going ahead with the plan will provide huge benefits to areas all across the town. Over the past year, as you would expect any councillors to do, I spent time knocking doors in my patch to speak to people about their thoughts on the scheme, and I could tell you there's much more soft support out there than any consultation could ever capture. Despite what some people might claim, the intention of this scheme isn't to punish drivers. I'm a driver myself, but I'm also a pedestrian and a cyclist. This is about making our town safer for all, and I hope your decision today reflects this. On behalf of Councillor Harvey, myself, and on behalf of our residents, I urge you to support the proposal and the amendment in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hunt. We have two Councillor Hunts in here today, but thank you very much to you. Next, we have Councillor David Cole. David, do you want to come up? And again, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm David Landon Cole on behalf of Huntingdon Town Council. I should start by saying that personally I quite like 20-mile-an-hour schemes, but I and we want them implemented so that, that they're understood by the public, the process behind them is seen to be fair, and that there's lasting support for them so people aren't calling them to be reversed in future. I have a question at the end, but I want to set the scene. You've heard Huntingdon Town Council's position. Thank you for giving it. So I'll go through the 4 points in that in turn. The consultation we think is substantially flawed. We're all aware of some of the procedural problems. When the Town Council was approached by the County Council, the Town Council ran its own consultation. That reported on 13th July 2023. It is on our website. I don't believe that's included in the report you have. I don't believe any of the other feedback is in there. That feedback suggests that people are mixed about a 20-mile-an-hour scheme and do have concerns about the process. I recognise that Appendix 3 gives answers to these concerns, but I'd suggest they've not been well communicated yet. I will say I've been doing my best personally to argue the case of 20 mile an hour on social media and deal with misconceptions about it, but I do understand why people think this is a done deal. I think there are also some issues with the report. I don't believe at 2.1 that the Town Council has submitted any LHI bids for 20 mile an hour schemes. I think 5.3 misses some risk implications. I think Appendix 3.7 is mistaken on what the Town Council agreed. So the Town Council wants 20-mile-an-hour zones on Stukely Meadows Estate, the Birds Estate, and on American Lane. Based on our consultation process and as those are areas that particularly need it. We do recognise the benefits of 20-mile-an-hour limits environmentally, safety-wise, encouraging active travel, and those are particular areas we think we should start. That's why we support those in those areas. Because we recognise the benefits, we would prefer the whole scheme to nothing, But the best option, and we think the option that provides a basis for a lasting support for 20 mile an hour is what we've set out. And that's a full scheme being contingent on people in Huntingdon wanting it. We would like a reconsult, and I'm very glad to see that amendment. Nevertheless, we do still want those 3 areas. We think a really strong consultation process following the gunning principles is really important because 20 mile hour schemes are controversial. We also know politics isn't held in high regard, and people believe that consultations aren't worth engaging with because they see them as being done deals. And the unusual way we've reached this position has added to that. That's damaging to 20 mile an hour schemes, potentially to your council and to politics writ large. So my question is, will you agree with what the town council suggested? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Now, we do, yes. So I do have an amendment on this one. I don't know whether the local members want to say anything before I bring the amendment or not. Tom or okay, Graham, would you like to?
I think it'd be helpful, Chair, if you explain the amendment.
Yes.
But maybe an officer could address David's question, and then local members can add their points before we open it up to general discussion.
Sure. Jeremy, do you want to add anything to the question there, and then I'll move the amendment?
Probably the one thing that I would say is that the officers of the county council did consider the proposals originally brought by the town council in detail, and it was the technical recommendation that from officers that those proposals as constituted would be unlikely to have a significant impact on speeds and driver behaviour in the town, and as such were of questionable value in terms of investment by the council in what is a priority road safety priority.
Thank you, Jeremy. So yeah, before we go any further, members, you will have seen that we've circulated an amendment to this one, and the amendment is to add a item C to the recommendations, which is to bring a report back to this committee in 24 months reviewing the impact of the 20 mile an hour programme. I think that is important because a lot of these have been implemented fairly quickly, and I think it's right that we as a council look at the success of all of these schemes and how well they have done, and make sure that they are aligning with the aims of which they started to. I do know it's always an interesting one, these 20 mile an hour and road schemes in general, because generally speaking, once they're bedded in, people have a very different opinion of them from when they're introduced. I know personally I represent Cambridge City, and I know we've had various road changes in my area, and it is very interesting to reflect the difference in opinion of local residents once they've lived with it for a period of time and actually then understood what the impact of that is. So I think it's important that we bring this back, so that's why I brought this amendment. Councillors, do you wish to debate the amendment or add anything on it? Yes, okay.
Chair, sorry, could I just ask if there's a seconder for the amendment?
Yeah, sorry, do I have Councillor Sanderson? Do you want to second? Yeah, Councillor Sanderson has indicated to second. Councillor Wilson. No, I'm getting confused. Councillor Coots.
Thank you. Just a clarification on your amendment, please. You mentioned bring a report back to this committee in 24 months reviewing the impacts of the whole programme. Are you suggesting that that 24 months should be from the moment we make the decision? Because some of the schemes have been in place already and some are upcoming. So what's your view on that?
I'm going to leave it as a roughly 2 years, and the schemes that have been in place for 2 years at that time. I think we'll have to look. I think there might be some other ones there. Yeah. Councillor Hunt.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. Am I right in my understanding of the amendment that it is suggested that the 20 mile an hour limit is installed now or as soon as possible, and then and this will be done before the results of a consultation are taken into account? So am I right in assuming that the amendment says install it now and then discuss it later in 2 years' time, when quite frankly it's unlikely to be reversed once it's installed? And my view would be that a reconsultation should take place before any installation, but I'll talk about that later. but can you answer whether it would be the amendment would have it installed fairly quickly?
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Other Councillor Hunt this time. Yes. So the decision with the amendment would be to proceed with the TRO as is being discussed in the first part of this report, and to implement it as already had the standard statutory consultation and as has been discussed by the Town Council and others. And then at a later date, once it has been implemented, so in 2 years' time, have a look at the success of it and whether it is meeting the aims and desires that it had originally. So that is the amendment there and the aim of it. Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Just wanted to clarify, first part, why 24 months? Why not a shorter time? And the second one is, you sort of implied that other 20-mile-per-hour schemes would be looked at as well. What would be the basis of selecting whether any of those other 20-mile-per-hour schemes would be looked at?
Thank you very much, Councillor King. Yes, you make a good point. 24 months is rather arbitrary, but it does give a good period of time for us to be able to actually gather some data on all of this one. Obviously, the shorter period of time, the less that you have to compare it against. One of the key things I think we will be wanting to look at is accident statistics in these areas. If you look at Edinburgh, I think they've seen a 10% reduction in casualties since the introduction of their 20-mile-an-hour zone there. So I think having a period of time allows us to not just have an anomaly and to be able to actually have a decent period to look at these. And that is also the reason why I wanted to expand it out to more than just Huntingdon, because with the number of accidents, I think it's good to look at all of our 20-mile-an-hour program and be able to compare those rather than just Huntingdon in isolation. So I think it's important for us to be able to have as much data as possible to be able to compare the success of these schemes, or not, as the case may be.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just ask for clarification again. So what will be the basis for choosing which 20-mile-per-hour schemes to look at?
I would envision that we'd look at the entire programme with a particular emphasis on Huntingdon, given that that was the request of the Town Council.
Gosh, that's a huge job.
It depends on how much detail that we go into on each one, but I think we do have all the accident data and we do gather that, and I think that is something that we should be looking at. It's every time that we introduce a new program that has a significant amount of budget that goes into it, it is beholden on us to look at the success of that and whether it's been working or not. That's just something I would clarify. Yes, sorry, Jeremy, did you want to say something?
Yes, it is worth noting that as a matter of course, we do keep schemes and their impacts under review. And obviously the safety record is one of the key elements there. And if you're looking at an individual scheme, we typically look at 3 years data. If we're looking at the whole programme, 2 years is probably fairly robust. In terms of speed data, we do post-scheme monitoring in a number of places. And I think, it is incumbent on us to to make sure that, especially if this this amendment passes, to make sure that we have adequate speed data to make a robust assessment of schemes as they reach that 1 and 2 year threshold, so we can actually see the impacts. Councillor King is not wrong that there's a significant, there's a significant amount of work there, but it is the sort of thing that we should be doing in post-scheme monitoring anyway, and I think bringing it back to committee is perhaps or specifically on 20 miles an hour is perhaps the improvement to the process that we're looking at here.
If I may, Chair, I hear what you and Jeremy say. I just think, we have not covered ourselves in glory recently with the consultation, and I'm just not sure whether trying to collate information for every 20-mile-per-hour scheme in the county is going to be any more robust than some recent consultation exercises. Thank you.
Noted, Councillor King. Note your concerns there. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much, Chair. So just for clarification then, if after 2 years the accident statistics don't bear out a 20-mile-an-hour scheme, if residents in Huntingdon or in any of the other schemes across where we've had 20 mile don't decide they don't want the scheme, are you saying at that point the county council will then take out the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits? Because that I think we need to be perfectly clear on going forward. are you saying there's a point at which, after 24 months, that residents, if they're not happy with the scheme and statistics don't prove the scheme works, that the county council at that point will take out the 20-mile-an-hour scheme?
So, Councillor Gardner, by that point, there will be a new administration. We'll have gone through county council elections. So I would not like to tie the hands of what the future person sitting in this chair may or may not do with the data. But I do believe that that data should be brought backwards. And I'm sure the committee will have a robust discussion at that point about what to do if that is indeed the case, as would be expected with any of these things, right? Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, I just want to be, are we talking, I've got a number of questions. Either I can take them as part of the amendment, or if the amendment goes past, is that, are we then talking about the substantive motion? So I'm not sure where you want me to ask those questions.
If they're not relevant to the amendment, we might save them for the substantive, unless you want them for the amendment. Okay, we'll see that. Councillor Slatter.
Thank you. This is about the amendment, which I very much support. And I think it related to what's just been said, it's not all about collisions. There is a massive amount of just anecdotal evidence about people who find it easier to cross the road or didn't have a fright. And if we are planning on collecting that sort of anecdotal response from people after 2 years, I know it's messy for officers like Jeremy, but it is very valuable. And it can come down on either side. But I don't think we should just be looking at accident data. It is also about the comfort, the pleasures of walking along, feeling safer, maybe getting on your bike more often, being able to get out of a side road because people don't fill up the gaps by speeding into them, all those sort of things. So I would like to support the amendment, and that reviewing the impacts of the 20-mile-an-hour, not limiting it to collisions or accident data.
Thank you very much, Councillor Slatter. And you are right, there are so many other side benefits often that come with it. I should probably note that while I don't currently live in a 20-mile-an-hour zone, I have lived in a 20-mile-an-hour zone on numerous occasions in the past. And I've taught my daughter to ride her bike down the 20-mile-an-hour zone because it feels so much safer to be able to do it within Cambridge City, who's obviously had large areas of 20-mile-an-hour for far longer. It would be good to gather that data as well, if we can. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the amendment, and that's one of the reasons why I seconded it. I do accept Councillor King's concerns here, and I think he was correct to raise them. It could be a very big task, but I think that's something we need to consider over the next 2 years as we go through this cycle. I certainly think that Huntingdon Town Council will be pleased to hear this. They put forward the 3 areas that they did, I think, with the very best of intentions. I think it was felt that American Lane, for example, there's a special needs school there. It would be appropriate, and I believe that's included in the wider scheme. So I welcome that. In terms of the consultation, yes, I think we've learned lessons from this. It's a very difficult thing to do, isn't it? A town of 25,000, we had 42 responses. But inevitably, you tend to hear from people who have concerns rather than people who are very pro a scheme. But I certainly think the amendment is a good way of addressing some of those concerns. So, as I said, I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson, and you're indeed right there. Consultation is something we always need to work on how to improve, but there is always that tension between how well you do consultation, how much it costs, and then how it then stops you from doing other schemes potentially because you've spent the money on consultation. So there is a very fine balance to be struck there between making sure that we gather as much information as possible and represent our residents, but also don't waste the council's money essentially and prevent other schemes from being delivered because of that. So it's a real tension there between the two of them, but I think we need to learn lessons and need to look at our consultation processes. Councillor Shaler.
Thank you very much, Chair. There have been a lot of questions and comments about consultation, and we have this kind of problem across the board. Often the consultation is more a legal form. It's an objection period. It's not actually a consultation like we would think of as a consultation. It's an opportunity to object now or forever hold your peace. But of course, we want as much engagement as possible. and all of us are elected members, and so we understand the value. And sometimes democracy can be chaotic, but at least you come up with more resilient solutions. But the contrast across the county is massive. I mean, we had thousands of people in consultations about Mill Road, and it's still difficult. In March area transport study, there was 55 people consulted, but it depends what we do with it. I very much like the idea of coming back later, as Councillor Slater has pointed out, with a lot of these mixed modes. One of the benefits of 20 mile an hour is that we have time to consider each other in an environment where we have different speeds encountering each other. It's a bit like the Titanic. You need time to respond. But we've had trouble before getting data. So, for instance, in accidents on cycles or pedestrians, often somebody will limp home. Where's the data? Even when they go to hospital, we don't get the data. Whereas when a car touches another car, there's a scratch, there's a report, there's insurance. So this is something that it taxes us, and often with our LHIs, we have to use anecdotal evidence, and I suspect going forward, that's what we will have to do here. But at least the more engagement we get with our communities, the more of this kind of information we should have access to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shaler. Councillor Keats.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to say I support this amendment as well. In respect to the scheme which was introduced a few months ago in Ely, I would welcome the opportunity to see such a report. I recognise how difficult it is to get the data. I will just say that there is the opportunity, I'm told, in Ely. We have a number of speed warning signs in Ely which are recording compliance data. So there will be data before and after on that question, which a number of members of the public have asked, how we assess that. So that would be another piece of data which would be useful into the review in 24 months' time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Keats, and indeed it would be good to be able to get that data if at all possible. Members, do we have any more questions on the amendment, or are we happy to vote on the amendment? Let's vote on the amendment. Does anybody not agree with the amendment? Would anyone like to go to a vote, or can I take it by? Okay, Councillor Sharp is indicating he might not agree with it. So therefore, can I see those in favour of the amendment, please? Okay. Those against? And those abstaining? Okay. Nick, I'll look to you, but I believe that's passed.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the result was 8-4, I believe.
Okay. 4 abstaining, not against.
Yes, sorry, abstentions. So the amendment has passed.
Brilliant. Thank you very much there. Okay, so now we move on to the substantive. It's become substantive. So do I have any? Yes, Councillor Criswell, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. You'll be aware that I sit on the 20 mile an hour working group and was very much involved in the 20 mile an hour policy decisions under the previous administration. And I very much support 20 mile an hour limits where appropriate and where we have the permission of the public. And I think that's the key message from me. We need to have the permission of the public. And just like we do with LHI schemes, we like to see where that has been locally instigated before we consider whether we take anything forward. And I've not been involved in the Huntingdon scheme at all, but reading the report, it very much reads as if the town council is pursuing this because they've had a financial opportunity to pay for it. There's no evidence of people knocking on their door to say, we would like a 20 mile an hour limit in Huntingdon. And that's what I would like to have seen. I live in a 20 mile an hour zone. It's what the people wanted. It's what they asked for. It's what they lobbied the parish council for. And therefore it was applied for. So the only consultation appears to be the statutory consultation, which, as we've heard, is a legal requirement, which really asks for objections rather than, is this something you really want? So for me, Chairman, this doesn't appear to have a groundswell of public coming forward to ask for this. it smacks of an imposition, and we're now saying to the public, if you really object to it, we'll reconsider, but actually this is what we plan to do. And that isn't helpful for introducing 20-mile-an-hour schemes. It's not helpful for the public to have ownership of the scheme and buy-in. So I'd like somebody to correct me if I'm wrong and say that actually the residents of Huntingdon all rose up and went to the town council and said, this is something we must do, because there's certainly no evidence of that in the report. So very much support bottom-up proposals, Chairman, and see their value. But just to repeat, I think we need the permission of the public if we're going to stray from the national speed limit of 30 miles an hour, because they need to have ownership of it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Criswell. If you look to your right, we have some people that are knocking on our door at the moment, I believe. We do have the local members, though, so I will ask them to come in. But do you want to come in at the end, or would the local members like to speak now to that one?
I'm a local member for Godminster, where others have spoken that we've already got a scheme which has worked extremely well. So I'm the local member for Godminster and Huntingdon South, which includes part of this area. The other local members are Tom Sanderson and Jonas King, who isn't here today. I understand your comment, Steve, about permission of the people, but you've got Connor and others from Hertford Road here today explaining why they are so supportive of the scheme. I think if you do any consultation, you always find that the people who are most vociferous are those who are against anything rather than in support of anything. We've heard about the difficulty of doing consultation and the balance between consultation where you leaflet every house and you make sure that absolutely every resident, shopkeeper, business owner and everybody else knows about it, versus the county council actually getting on and doing something. And we are elected representatives together with the town council and the district councillors, and sometimes we have to make decisions which wouldn't necessarily be the preferred ones of everybody else. I've listened to the comments of the town council. I've been to town council meetings recently, read the views of local residents who've made representations to the county council, and many other people who have posted on local Facebook pages. And whilst I accept that the county council consultation was not ideal, and I think we've all agreed with that, as we've heard from David, the town council ran its own consultation previous to this. I and others have posted on the local Facebook pages, and that has led to various comments from people. And in overall, I think all those different initiatives were adequate in promoting the proposals. It is significant, in my view, that only 42 representations from a town of over 25,000 people were received by the county council. I think if there was a real groundswell of opinion against this, the county council would have received a lot more. Jeremy has explained, and David has explained, the town council's recommendations made in May, so I won't go through those again. But what I think is important is that the original 3 areas outside schools were assessed by officers, and I agree with their conclusions that they're not extensive enough. Just having areas around the schools themselves wouldn't cover the roads where people walk to their schools, residential streets, and they wouldn't have included Hertford Road within the Ring Road, which, as Connor has explained to you, is an area which has got a lot of speeding traffic, where a lower speed would be significantly better and increase the safety for pedestrians and cyclists. The police have not objected to this scheme. They've identified that there are some issues with it, as we've heard, but they understand and support the overall strategy of reducing speeds in Huntingdon. And on that basis, I'm pleased that Huntingdon Town Council has indicated its preference for the scheme as now proposed if they can't have what they originally suggested. I'm pleased and will support the amendment to the resolution to review the situation in Huntingdon and other areas in 2 years, as that fits both with the Huntingdon Town Council recommendation and wasn't something which officers originally had in mind, but it definitely fits in with what the town council is suggesting. It's good practice anyway to review what has been done, and as Jeremy said, that is often done as part of reviewing post-scheme implementation to see that we've achieved what we said that we were going to achieve. So for those various reasons, Chair, I'm happy to support the scheme as proposed and fully support the amendment to review all the schemes in 2 years' time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. That was very, very useful and very good to have you along here today as one of the local members. Councillor Sharp, well, Councillor Sanderson is the other local member. Did you want to come in first? Okay, Councillor Sharp.
Thanks, Tom. I've got a few questions and a few comments. The first one is, and Councillor Wilson touched on it, is, and it was from what Jeremy said, is that officers have considered the proposals, but or the proposal, sorry, that the town council put forward, but the reduction in speed would have been negligible. I think it would have been, certainly from a personal point of view, it would have been useful to have seen those thoughts laid out in the paper, because that might have helped. Is more a comment than a question probably. But where I'm going to hit on is, I think the consultation, it was flawed. Obviously that's why we've ended up here today, and I'm not sure from a delegated decision point of view why it's being held in committee, why all the schemes can't be held in committee. If we're going to hold one in committee, why can't we hold all of them? And again, as I know from, there is a proposal at some stage to consult on a Cambridge-wide 20 mile an hour, which I believe is going to have a leaflet drop on every house. So if that's going to be done in Cambridge, why, to be equitable, then it should be done in every community. Otherwise, we are missing people out. So, and also we're going to have, I believe, it's not going to just be leaflets. I think there's going to be more than that. I have got concerns. Yes, 42. I agree with Graham. 42 is not a huge response, which is put. And initially, obviously he was one of the local members who decided the scheme, but originally it was decided on just 8 responses, which of which only 2 were in support of it, as I understand it from the papers. So that, I mean, personally, I abstained because if the amendment says we're going to review this and others in 24 months, then that's better than nothing. But I personally think we should do a complete reconsultation of the whole scheme and look at what the town council are saying. I understand the resident, I didn't get his second name, Connor, Hertford Road. Yes, you've got some, I presume he's referring to the terraced houses near opposite the playing field that goes straight out onto the street. Yes, that sort of area. I think it works around schools and other areas. And I've got concerns where the police are sort of making comments about certain roads being included, because obviously that happened. But I was in Huntingdon yesterday afternoon for the track, and you drive around the ring road, and I think there are certain, that's 30 around the ring road, but there are certainly cars that are driving more than 30 around that ring road. So just putting a speed limit reduction in is not necessarily going to change certain drivers' habits. Again, referring to the resident from Hertford Road, he was talking about cars doing 50, 60, which is absolutely unacceptable. But unfortunately, there are people out there who do that. So I'm not against, I've got 20 mile, I've supported 20 mile an hour in some of my villages, so I'm not against the whole principle. Speed, I campaign about speeding all the time, but I'm just concerned about the consultation process on this, certainly. Thank you.
Thank you,
Graham. Could I just clarify for Alan's benefit, the area of Hertford Road that Connor was referring to is within the Huntingdon Ring Road, so it's it's from the 3 Tons pub down to where the fire station used to be, that inside bit, which people use, including me, as a bit of a cut through rather than going all the way around the ring road. But I agree entirely, people do speed around the ring road. And then the bit of the main Hertford Road, as you and I know it, going up past the terrace houses with the recreation ground on the right-hand side, would be left at 30 mile an hour, and then it goes on to 40 mile an hour. And that was something separate that the town council would like reviewing at some stage to reduce that speed from 40 down to 30.
Through you, Chair. Thank you for that. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, Councillor Sharp, I do think it's really important to point out that we do always have drivers speeding, but what the data bears out on all of these things is that if you reduce the speed limit, it reduces the mean speed, which overall reduces collisions, because it's not always the drivers that are speeding that are having accidents, it's a lot of the other drivers as well. So that data is really important. David, you just wanted to come in with some clarification or something?
Yeah, just a couple of clarifications. There's some reference to the governance route and also references to flawed consultation. The approach taken to this scheme is consistent to the approach taken to other 20 mile in areas and aligns with our policy and also the statutory requirement. This scheme is coming to committee as part of the delegated decision process. We consult the chair and vice chair. As part of that process, we had this discussion about whether this scheme should come to committee as per the constitution, and hence why this scheme's presented. But just to clarify, the consultation undertaken is in accordance with our policy, and the statutory consultation is the consultation that is brought and set out in the report.
Thank you very much, David. And yes, just to clarify as well, the delegated decision meeting, there is obviously another local member, Councillor Jonas King, who unfortunately hasn't joined us today because it would have been useful to get his feedback as well, but he hasn't decided to come along. He had some slightly different opinions, which is why it got escalated to the chair and vice chair, and why it comes back here, because it is important that where we have perhaps non-aligned views that we do all discuss it in the most public way possible. Councillor Sanderson, did you want to say something?
Yes, please, Chair, and thank you. Just to pick up on some of the comments made about Huntingdon Town Council, of which I declared I'm a member and have been for 25 years now. I mean, it's rare that the public do rise up and bombard the town council. It's only, I think, happened twice in my experience. So, and I think their views actually amongst members were quite different, but they did come up, I think, with a very clear set of suggestions, which Jeremy's outlined. I think Councillor Landon Cole expressed their views extremely well and articulately earlier, and I'm pleased to see that he was happy with the idea of reconsultation. And I think that it's correct. Their view was that they would prefer to have another consultation, but if that wasn't possible, but it looks like it will be in 24 months, then they would like to see the scheme go ahead. So I'm pleased to see that we're in that situation. I mean, I was actually one of those who suggested that we look at those three parts of town, because I'm not a highways expert by any means, but I think myself and others felt that would be more appropriate. I was very keen to see American Lane highlighted, because the head teacher of Spring Common Send School actually asked me if we could do that. There has been an accident there recently with a young person who I'm pleased to say was okay, but obviously it's one of the main Send schools in the district, and obviously very vulnerable people. They need to be transported by car. Some of them do still cross American Lane. So there were concerns there. I was keen to see Stookley Meadows as part of that, but I do accept the expert advice we've had that those areas in themselves, including the Birds Estate in Hertford, wouldn't be substantial enough for the policy to work. So I'm pleased to see that we've looked at expanding it in other areas. I'm not sure how we would reconsult again now. I think that would be very difficult to do without gathering the data and looking at how the scheme works over the next 24 months. I do agree with Councillor Sharp, though, the ring road, which he and I both experienced yesterday, there's a lot of speeding along there, and it can be very dangerous at times. And as you said, Chair, it's not always the person, the vehicle that's speeding that actually is involved in the accident. It's the impact it has on other vehicles and pedestrians. So I think this has been a difficult process, but I think we're now at the right point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. So just for everyone else, on my list still to speak, I have Councillor Hunt, Councillor MacDonald, Councillor Daunton and Councillor Shaler. And now I've got Councillor King on my list as well. So Councillor Hunt, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, quite honestly, the county council's made a bit of a dog's breakfast of this whole procedure, hasn't it? We've got different communities that are totally against it. We've got other ones that are having it done to them, and there's other people who've gone against the wishes of their residents, and it really is nothing that the county council can be proud of, in my view. For the record, I support the 20-mile-an-hour limit in well-considered areas like schools, high pedestrian volumes, and various reasons. And I think it's fair to say that I totally supported the 20-mile-an-hour limit in Hadnam, where it was proper consultation, asking the people, and the majority supported it. We do, after all, live in a democracy, and I think that is prime. I mean, we've got this is much more than just Huntingdon. We've got a situation in Ely where 122 people voted in favour, and a petition that is running at the moment, it is still current, has already got 20 times the amount of residents who don't want it. 20 times already, and that's increasing every day. So it is a dog's breakfast. And I think what has also shocked me is that when someone wants to have a petition and they want to have availability for people who don't have computers, they were not allowed to have the petition in the county library in Ely. They weren't allowed to have a book there that people could sign. Well, that doesn't sound like democracy to me. And when you've got 20 times the amount of people who don't want it, and now, so it's a dog's breakfast, and Huntingdon needs to do it again. If you look at Huntingdon, let's be honest, if you take the local paper, do you really read the official notices on the back page every week? Well, I take the Ely Standard, and I don't read about the drains in Grunty Fen that are being closed for 2 hours or not. I don't. And so to put it saying, oh, it's in the Hunts Post, yes, it probably complies with the law. I imagine it does. But where you've got Huntingdon, where, and it is fairly low, I must admit, but you've got 42 replies, 26 said no, and 15 said yes. Now, we live in a democracy, and we've just seen it 2 weeks ago. MPs have lost their seats over 10 votes. Well, that's fair. That's what democracy is. And I don't think it's very likely that a fair decision is going to come out of the council here. The council here is politically controlled. The leaders will have an opinion, and I think it's very unlikely that members of the alliance, which is the Liberal Democrats, Labour and the Independents, it's very unlikely that they will vote in any way that is anti the county council. So I think it's unlikely that that's going to happen.
Councillor Hunt.
I think
Councillor
also
Hunt, I believe with those statements, we need to be very careful here with judicial review. I don't believe there is any member here that is predetermined or in any way that way.
I said it was likely the decision. I said it was likely the decision.
To make that very clear.
I accept the fact that that may have upset some people, and I won't say it again. The consultation result, which I believe there should be another one in Huntingdon, should be king, not the wishes of the councillors. But I would be guided in my division. I'm guided by what the people who vote for me tell me. And if they tell me one thing, that's how I agree with it. I think the idea of having installing everything and installing the roundels and the speed limits and making all the rules, I think, and then debating it 2 years later, I think I wouldn't. I would take a bet on whether or not that would be undone. I doubt if it would be. I understand Huntingdon must properly be reconsulted. It's a very serious thing that is likely to be with them for the town for a very long time. And it also sets an example to Ely, to March and the other principal towns in the area, St Neots and things like that. So I think it should be properly done, and no work should start before the results came in. Democracy must be supreme, and that's the way I believe it. And until there's been a proper consultation, how on earth people can say we've asked people, we've had a consultation, we've had a clear result, but we're not going to take any notice of it? Well, that's wrong. That's not what I was elected for. And so that's my point of view. I will be voting against. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt, and I won't bring up the crematorium or any of those things there. Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks, Chair. And you'll be pleased to know I won't be making political speeches like Councillor Hunt. So the easiest thing to do, and addressing really to the residents and the Town Council and David, the easiest thing for us to do as councillors is to do nothing. That's the easiest thing to do. But you know, we have to take our responsibility seriously, and whilst we maybe don't have perhaps a legal duty of care on things like this, we certainly, I feel anyway, rightly or wrongly, we have a moral duty of care to really look at these schemes. And one more point on this is when we're considering these schemes, and all of us were considering schemes outside of our area, we really do think about it, all of us, and we discuss it in detail. What are the pros and cons of doing this? But if by implementing something like this, we prevent one accident, just one, and one loss of life, frankly, I think it's worth it. And I understand that some residents don't want it, but an awful lot of people do. So I base all of my decision making on the 20 mile an hour on looking at the data from the Cambridgeshire Insight. And I've looked at that over the past couple of days. I've looked at the scheme as it is proposed, and I've looked at the data from Huntingdon on the website and the surrounding area. And that data really convinced me that there's something that we need to do. Now, the amendment that came forward earlier on said, look, nobody's perfect. We don't have every single aspect of the data and the facts to distill. And so therefore, I think the amendment was right to say, look, after 24 months, let's take a look and see whether it's brought about benefits. 20 mile an hour implementations do bring about some changes in behaviour straight away. We've seen this in Duxford, in my area recently, where they extended the 20 mile an hour scheme and installed speed warnings, flashing warnings on the roads. And even within weeks, there have been some change in behaviour. Now, over a period of time, that has to be measured. And somebody made reference to the fact that those units are measuring speeds and will be measuring speeds. But the change, I've asked residents on roads that were plagued by rat running and drivers driving too fast in what was a 30 mile an hour zone. And they've already said they have seen changes in behaviour. And it's not just in Duxford, it's in Eagleton as well. Finally, on consultation, look, consultations are never perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect consultation. Wherever you do it, whatever you do it about, you've always got a proportion of residents that will say, look, I elected councillors to make decisions for me based on all the data that is available. And expert officers who are paid full time to look at this information and to do that. And, you know, I've had questions about consultations. It was referred to earlier on about some of the consultations in the city. There are no such thing as perfect consultations. We could reconsult, and we could reconsult again, and we could reconsult again. And meanwhile, people potentially will be hit by cars and not survive. And so I personally feel that I've got enough data from the collision data and enough information to say we should try this in Huntingdon and see what the benefits are. And if at the end of 24 months the data is saying it's not bringing benefits, then absolutely we should review it again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Daunton.
Thank you. I want to take up the point about the blanket or unfortunate
misappropriation or appropriation of that word. Or I prefer the term whole area, the whole area approach, as opposed to just round schools. And I think Councillor Wilson picked up on this point earlier on. How do you define an area just round schools? Children come to school from all directions, some walking, some cycling, some coming by car. How do you define that area, and how do you make it safer if you're going in and out of a 20-mile-an-hour zone? It doesn't work to have the area just around schools. I think if we're introducing a 20-mile-an-hour area to make it safer, to make the whole area safer, then we can't just restrict it to within or around schools. I think that it just doesn't work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Daunton. I'm going to abuse my position as chair to say I wholeheartedly agree with you there. As somebody that bikes my 6-year-old to school every day, it always amazes me when people talk about the area immediately around the school, not the mile that we spend going to school, where we're at the most dangerous that it possibly can be. And it really greatly frustrates me that so many people think of the very old traditional view of kids' safety school, which is we drive them to school and therefore all we have to worry about is the 100 meters outside the school. That is not what happens in a large number of cases these days. And therefore we do need to be making those whole routes safe. I know personally with my own daughter in school, and have spoken to other parents that don't feel comfortable biking their kid to school along the route because the route is not safe. So therefore they go huge roundabout rates or find other ways simply because they don't feel safe on that mile-long stretch to school. So that is something that we really do need to consider. And when people say just the area outside of school, I find that incredibly frustrating, that we need to think about the entire journey to school, not the last 100 meters. So sorry to abuse my position there. Next, I have Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. Well, there's so much that I've heard recently that I disagree with. I just don't know where to start. But I start from a philosophical point that we should be doing things with people, not to them. And the Town Council has given a very clear steer of what they would like to see, the 3 areas. And we, as a county council, should have strained all of our sinews to deliver that, to make it work. And the fact that there is nothing in the papers about why it doesn't work, I find rather suspicious. So what I would like, this is what I wish we were debating today. It would be how to make those 3 areas that the Town Council wanted in their original request work. So that's what we should be debating, how to make those 3 areas work as 20s. Now, it's not just me saying that, that's also the police. Because the police are saying, fine, go ahead with 20, but don't look at us to enforce it. So rather than spend all of this money on a blanket speed limit, and I'm going to use that word because that is what it is, what we should be doing is looking at those 3 areas that the Town Council asked for and using some of that additional money that we're going to be spending on this blanket limit to make those 3 areas work. And that might include various types of traffic calming measures. But that's the way forward, in my opinion. I don't approve of blanket bans generally, because I think that, they throw up more problems than they deliver, but I very much support targeted measures. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Shaler.
Thank you very much, Chair. On reduction of speed and collisions, it would be great if members got the chance to talk to some of our junior travel ambassadors across the county. They are incredibly enthusiastic about safe routes to school and ways of getting to school that are more healthy than being driven and parking on some verge somewhere, that's for sure. I want to talk a bit more about the CO2 reduction that is a benefit of driving slower as well. And this is something that is kind of fudged across a lot of the business cases for a lot of our projects. Even the March Area Transport Study, which is, I have to say, is quite an old one, and also in the A47, they talked about reduction in congestion reduces CO2. It doesn't. More cars going faster produce more CO2. But this is also about connectivity and equality. And of course, you produce a lot less carbon if you ride a bus, even a diesel bus, than driving an electric car. And so in most of these 20-mile-an-hour zones, we're talking about mixed modes, making those areas safer to do different things. And as I keep on saying, every bus stop is an active transport hub. And so the more people that we can have feeling safe to be in those environments, then we can support those other modes of travel. And anybody who supports passenger transport supports the entire network. More cars we put on the road, unfortunately, it makes the whole network less viable. Some people, of course, do need to drive, and we want to make it safer and easier for them to do so, but allow people to use passenger transport where they can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shayler. I have two more people registered to speak. If anybody else wants to, let me know. Otherwise, I think we'll try and draw a line under it at that point. But next, I've got Councillor Slatter.
Thank you. I come to this from the philosophy of a nurse, really, and the emphasis on road safety and universal precautions. I wonder, Councillor Hunt and I are both old enough to remember the introduction of seatbelts. They didn't go down terribly well, but we know they've saved a lot of lives. I know this is dangerous territory when it's sort of saying we want to do these things because it's good for you. But on the other hand, I can speak from experience of years of living in a 20-mile-an-hour universal zone. Not only that, but where we built new housing, there are 30-mile-an-hour, and I am beset by residents who are asking for me, when are we going to get the 20-mile-an-hour? Because that is based on their experience. And I think that is a key thing, to base it on an obvious lived experience where we can observe it. And I cannot see how it makes sense to have something just outside a school, or just outside an old people's home, or just outside near where vulnerable people. All pedestrians are vulnerable when it's a question of a collision with a great big piece of metal. And I'm afraid it is obvious to me in terms of road safety that this is a good thing. The 20-mile-an-hour authorises the car drivers who are being careful, or just remember they should be careful, to go slower. And that just generally tones things down. I think Councillor MacDonald has seen this happening as well. The universal system does work well. Otherwise, people are confused as drivers. They're not sure whether they now can suddenly accelerate or whether they should be going at 20 or what. So it makes it's much more sensible, much more straightforward. And I would urge people to see how it turns out.
Thank you very much, Councillor Slatter. Councillor Keats.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I will be very brief. There's two things I want to say. One was, although it's substantially irrelevant, I couldn't actually leave Councillor Hunt's comments about Ely hanging in the air without a little bit of response. I was amused to hear him say that, Chair, that he would be guided by the democracy of the local residents. Doesn't seem to have applied in Ely, where the majority of the local residents were in favour of the scheme, and nevertheless Councillor Hunt and many others have gone on opposing it ever since. I attempted to look at the petition which he and his colleagues have launched. There didn't seem to be any way of saying you supported the 20-mile-an-hour scheme on that petition. It was only a one-sided one, so I wasn't able to complete it. I also noticed that some of the people who'd signed had nothing to do with Ely at all. They didn't seem to be residents of Ely. The Ely situation is not really relevant to the debate here. We're talking about Huntingdon. So if perhaps I could have done a point of personal explanation or something, but we don't tend to do that sort of thing. The other general point I'd just like to make about this term blanket. We have a thing in this country called the national speed limits. They are blanket speed limits. There's a blanket speed limit of 70 miles an hour on any road, 60 miles an hour on roads which are not dual carriageway, 30 miles an hour in areas which have street lamps. Those areas vary dramatically. But blanket speeds have been applied to all of those. And therefore, to use the word blanket as an insult seems very strange to me. It just seems to be another development of the similar things we've had before. I will be supporting the proposal of Huntingdon because I have heard so many strong arguments in favour of the system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Must come back on this accusation that blanket is a pejorative term. I was just using it as an accurate description of what is being proposed.
Councillor King, let's not get into definitions of words here. And I had said I was going to draw a line under this, but I now have Councillor Criswell and Councillor Wilson. So we'll do Councillor Criswell, Councillor Wilson, and then I am drawing a line, okay? Because I think we've discussed this a lot now. Councillor Criswell.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to clarify, I will be voting against this. But to be very clear, I do support 20-mile-an-hour limits in certain places. And if this had been a comprehensive scheme that had been discussed with the public before the application and been approved, then I would be very much supporting it. It does seem it was consulted on after the application and therefore doesn't have local ownership. So that's my reason against, Chairman, not that I'm against road safety or 20-mile-an-hour limits.
Thank you, Councillor Criswell. Councillor Wilson, you get the last laugh.
Well, you can stop me if you wish, Chair. I just wanted to come back to Simon's comments about blankets. On page 67 in paragraph 3.1, it describes very clearly that the scheme involves the introduction of a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on all residential streets within the built-up part of Huntingdon, except for a number of through routes, and then they are listed. So it is not blanket in any way. It doesn't cover the whole of Huntingdon. There are through routes which are excluded from this proposal, and therefore I would not describe it as a blanket application in the same way as we have, for example, in Godminster, which is definitely blanket because there are no through roads.
Thank you. I won't get into whether a blanket or a holy blanket or a, gauze blanket or whatever we have in this sense. Thank you very much, everyone, for your comments. I think this has been a really good debate, and thank you to all the members of the public that have been there. Being the chair of this committee, I have to say, is probably one of my favorite jobs. I have a number of jobs, but I do love this job. One of the worst parts of it, though, is going and talking to people that have sadly lost loved ones through, well, I don't even want to call them accidents, but through things that have happened on the roads, incidents and collisions that have happened. I mean, recently I was actually in Huntingdon, the Sebastopol Cannon with Hazel Goff. Sadly, Mike was hit by a vehicle and died on the roads around Huntingdon. So it is one of the most terrible things to have to do, is to go and speak to one of those people that has had a loved one lose their life due to the roads that we have today. And it is mind-blowing that I think this stat is something like 5 people a day die on the roads of this country, and yet it gets nowhere near as much attention as anywhere else. If you were to have the number of people that die on our roads each year be killed on the railways, be killed in aeroplane accidents, or be killed, by a terrorist accident, it would be front page news every day of the year, and it is not. So often we have become so acclimatized to the death that happens on our roads, and we as a council are committed to Vision Zero, and we need to try and deliver that one. So often we get asked, do we have to wait for somebody to die before we do something? And I believe that as far as we possibly can, that should not be the case. And that is one of the reasons why I support this proposal. The other slight thing to say is Councillor Hunt made the point of, doing exactly what our residents tell us to do. I would say very importantly that I don't believe that we should govern by referenda. As an elected politician, I believe that it is my job to show leadership, and the fundamental guiding light to me is to act in the best long-term interests of my residents. And that is what I believe that I have been elected to do. And where I come to these decisions, for me, it is always that compass of what is the best long-term interests of my residents. So today, we're about to get to the vote, but I would implore everybody here to think of the residents of Huntingdon, those that are in the room and those that are outside the room, and make sure that when you are voting, you have considered the papers, you have considered what is put before you, and what is put before you, not what other people have made of it, be it blanket or not a blanket, and that you vote in the long-term best interests of the people of Huntingdon, because that is what I believe that we're all here to do so. Now, I don't believe we've got to a point today where I think we're going to have a unanimous vote, so I think we are going to have to do this as a vote. So let me read out what the recommendations are before we do that, though. So the committee is recommended to consider the objections and written representations received during the statutory period notice for the scheme and approve the implementation of the 20-mile scheme as published, and C, bring a report back to this committee in 24 months reviewing the impact of the 20-mile-an-hour programme. Right, can I have those in favour, please? Hands in the air. Okay. You got that? So it's all of us and Councillor French. Those against? Brilliant. Any abstaining? No. Okay. In that case, then the motion is carried. I thank you very much. Committee members, we have been going for just about 2 hours now, so I think it's time that we take a short break. Can I ask everyone is back here at 12:10? Is that okay if we come back for 12:10, where we will keep going? Thank you very much. And a big thank you to all those in the audience that came along. It is great to see so many people here. So thank you for coming. Take care. Right, shall we continue, everybody? Thank you very much. And the next item on our agenda is the East West Rail Company's consultation. And Chris, you are popular today, but you're going to introduce the report on this one. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee. The report here provides a summary for committee on the East West Rail project and outlines areas in the report which could form part of the council's response to a future consultation on the project. Delegations are sought to enable officers to prepare and submit a robust technical response to any statutory consultation by East West Rail, as it's expected that any consultation period will be unlikely to align with committee dates. Where delegated powers are used, it's proposed that draft responses will be sent to local members and to members of this committee in advance of submission to the Planning Inspectorate. The East West Rail project is a strategic scheme that's proposing a new railway between Oxford and Cambridge. Previous sections between Oxford and Bedford are either in construction or are now operating, and the section between Bedford and Cambridge is now being developed by the East West Rail Company. With a project of this size, it will be promoted using the development consent order process, meaning that an application will be submitted to the Planning Inspectorate, who will then make recommendations for a final decision to the Secretary of State. The Council will be expected to participate in a future examination as part of this process to represent its views and position on all elements of the scheme, including highways, environment, flooding, archaeology, and other disciplines. The next stage, where the Council will formally respond to the East West Rail Company, will be its statutory consultation, which was planned to take place this summer, but was affected by the general election. Officers await a response from East West Rail on their revised proposals for their consultation. Limited technical information is currently available for officers to review. Until there is substantive information available, the report recommends adopting a holding response until this further detail is available for review. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chris. Before we go any further, we have a public question on this one from Mark Kleinman. Mark here?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the committee. I hope you can hear me.
I think Mark might be via Zoom.
Yeah, I'm via Zoom.
Other providers are, of course, available. There we go. Mark, can you hear us?
I can hear you, Alex. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mark. Brilliant.
Fantastic.
You have 3 minutes. Over to you.
All right. And first of all, Chair, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and apologies to the committee that I couldn't be there in person. I'm asking you as the committee to reject the recommendations of this report. The report takes too much on board of EWR's tendacious claims, and it takes them at too much at face value. The county has very important transport and net zero targets and ambitions. This project will not, contrary to some of the statements in the officer's report, deliver against your ambitions 1 and 2, and rather it will undermine them. EWR's proposals for what's called CS3, which is the Bedford to Cambridge part, do not proceed from a coherent evidence-based approach. They do not address the real connectivity challenges of the county, and they offer extremely poor value for money on their own calculations. They also, against the advice of their technical consultants, completely ignore Northstowe, which the Chancellor has identified by name as one of 6 stalled housing sites in the whole of the UK, which she mentioned in her first ever speech as Chancellor. EWR's case rests on unsourced estimates of major jobs growth at Cambridge Biomedical Park and huge development at both Camborne and Tempsford. Taking CBC first, if we take their numbers seriously, which I'm not saying we should, but if we take them seriously, they're talking about 42,000 jobs at CBC. That is approximately the same number as the number of jobs on the Olympic Park in London. Regarding the new housing growth at Camborne and Tempsford, this will not lead to a modal shift away from road to public transport and active journeys, but rather it will hugely increase the number of car journeys, the number of vehicle miles travelled, air pollution and congestion, And I might also add, having sat through the last interesting debate, the number of accidents, fatal or otherwise, on Cambridgeshire roads. Furthermore, it's not clear that the Labour government will actually support EWR. I would expect that as part of their plans for Great British Rail, they will take EWR into new structures where it will have to compete against many other projects up and down the country with far better cost-benefit analysis. Moreover, the government has made it clear that they will give the Mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, along with the other metro mayors, new transport powers and possibly new transport funding to deliver a properly integrated strategy. So I suggest to this committee that you reject the recommendations here and commission your own independent analytical work from your own officers working, I would imagine, with CPCA officers in order to determine what the real impacts of EWR's current proposals would be, not only on Cambridgeshire residents and businesses, but also on your own budgets in terms of their failure to address last mile issues and their assumption that someone else will pick up the tab for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question, Mark. One of our officers here, Mike Williams, who's the Assistant Director of Project Delivery, will now give a response to you.
Thank you, Chair. The report before committee seeks delegated authority to respond to the anticipated statutory consultation on East West Rail proposals. In formulating its response to the consultation, the Council will objectively review East West Rail's proposals against our strategic objectives, assessing the consultation material and supporting evidence available when the consultation takes place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, we've had the introduction, we've heard the questions. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask themselves or anything they would like to add to the debate on this? Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. Although the East West Rail trajectory is not directly through, my division, it's very close to it. And I'm also a member of Cabinet in South Cambridgeshire, and this is of concern to our residents right across South Cambridgeshire, especially those along what is now the southern route. I think that the questioner asked us to, reject the recommendations. I'm not sure that's appropriate at the moment. Why? Because we have to hear what the new government really has to say about East West Rail. He may be correct that they have other fish to fry. I don't know. He may be correct. And I think the only logical thing that we can do is wait for that response from the government, see whether the business, they're going to update the business case and see if that business case is compelling compared to other schemes in the UK. And I think that's what the recommendations are saying. And so I can live with that. I know that, in South Cambridgeshire, there are big concerns about potential incremental housing development as a result of East West Rail. Again, we can't put the cart before the horse. We have to see what the government says. We have to see what the business case is, and then we address it at that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I broadly agree with Councillor MacDonald. I think we've got more details to come. I think there are a lot of issues coming out of this, and we did have a discussion on it briefly yesterday at the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, because if we look on the west of this, on the west of the region, we've got the proposed station at Thamesford with the huge housing that they're going to include, and I have a personal sentimental issue with that, because my late father-in-law flew nearly 50 missions from Thamesford Airfield, taking agents into and out of France during the war. So I've been to that airfield many times, and the barn that they sort of scuttled, went from. So it's a very personal thing. And also, as was raised by St Neots councillor yesterday, about a station closer to St Neots for the interchangeability. And then from a more constituent point of view is obviously how it's going to come east from Cambridge on the Cambridge to Ipswich line through Newmarket. Dullingham, the first stop on that line, is in my division. So again, I'm interested. So I hear what the questioner is saying, but I think agreeing with Councillor MacDonald that we accept the report, but obviously there's a lot more work and discussion to happen before it goes forward.
Thank you very much. Do I have anyone else? Councillor Daunton.
Yes, just a point of information, actually. At the top of the report, under electoral divisions affected, it doesn't include my division of Fulbourn, and yet East West Rail has been sending land interest questionnaires to my division. So I think it should be extended. The electoral division should be extended to include Fulbourn and Cherry Hinton. They are contacting residents there. So if you could please include those divisions. And secondly, just to take up the point about, obviously that this is we are statutory consultees. Who else are we? Where else are we taking evidence or information? We're not just taking evidence and information from East West Rail themselves. We're gathering a wider amount of information, amount of evidence, aren't we? And if we are, could you perhaps give some indication of the kind of bodies that we're speaking to or groups that we're speaking to?
Thank you, Chris. Did you want to come back on that one?
Yeah, thank you. I'll answer kind of sort of slightly hypothetically, but if the statutory consultation comes forwards, then we would expect to be talking to lots of officers throughout the council in different areas, flooding and biodiversity, ecology. We would be talking to Combined Authority, but also some of the statutory agencies such as Historic England and Natural England, the big players in the consents areas who have, real interests in some of the national matters, Environment Agency and others as well, plus stakeholders at the districts and residents as well, I think.
I just want to come back on that slightly as well, and Councillor Daunton, I know you do as well. Just say, obviously, it is our job to represent our residents as well. And I do welcome the questionnaire that's gone out recently to all members seeking their concerns and questions that they want to feed in. But do you think that is incredibly important that as a council, we are not just here for the statutory bits, we are here to represent our residents. But Councillor Daunton, do you want to add to that?
That's precisely the point I was going to make. I think we need representation. We need to think about the residents and the other bodies, not just the statutory consultee bodies.
Sorry, I left my microphone on there, but Chris, I think you got the point there, that it is so important that we represent all of our constituents in the area as well. I don't know whether I think it is good that the questionnaire has been sent around to all members. Obviously, I would encourage to make sure that that does stay open as well, because we don't have the statutory consultation yet. So we are going to want to know what our members are going to want to be feeding in after that point. And obviously, I really do support recommendation C here, which is to make sure that when we have our draft response, it does come back and is sent to this committee. Obviously, time-wise, we might not be able to actually bring it back to the committee for a committee meeting, because time is going to be of the essence on this one when it comes out. But I do really support that all members of this committee need to be aware of what our response is here. And if not entirely, not sure everyone will be happy with every part of every response, but at least that we're aware of it and able to feed into that process is incredibly important. Sorry, Councillor King, though.
Thank you, Chair. My question has been answered.
Thank you very much, Councillor King. Councillor Shaler has just added himself to the list.
Sorry, just a very short comment to do with the change of government. The very first on the list of transport priorities is rail and rail enhancement, and I think I don't think anybody here would disagree that our priority is making sure we get the Ely area rail capacity enhancement done. That will be fantastic. I have heard suggestions that we should have another station on the East West Rail closer to St. Neots, which would make sense if you, for instance, wanted to go from Cambridge to Huntingdon by rail. And so some of these nuances will come out hopefully later on, and we will be representing our constituents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else? Councillor Hunt.
So you're ignoring me, Chair.
For once, I didn't see you, Councillor Hunt. Apologies.
It's all right. I think this is such an exciting project that it's something which goes far beyond just sort of Cambridge to Bedford. I think the very thought of being able to go from Yarmouth to Cardiff is just something wonderful. And anybody who's spent 3.2 hours on a bus going from Cambridge to Oxford is really would welcome a train service. But I actually sort of echo the thoughts from the other side of the chamber, in that the effect of this is so large that I think as many members as possible should be involved in any consultation or discussion, because it will have effect almost all over the county. But I think that point has already been made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have anybody else? No. Okay. So I do think that as the questioner asked us to withdraw and not pass the recommendations, I do think that would not be ideal in this case, because we do need to endorse the fact that the position set out in the report, and we do need to be able to have the ability to be able to respond to the statutory consultation when it happens, and the county council failing to respond to that would be deeply problematic, I think, for all of us, and undesirable. That the council really does need to be able to respond to that. So I really do support the recommendations as set out in this here. As mentioned before, I do think it's important that the council, in its response to East West Rail, does reflect upon not only its own interests and the interests that it holds in relation to the highways, environment, and everything else, but does reflect the concerns of many of our residents. I know that there are a number of concerns out there, and we do need to make sure that we address those as far as possible. And if the new government does decide to progress East West Rail, that it is the best possible solution that we can come up with. On that, if it is going to be progressed, I think we do need to be feeding in all of our concerns and our asks as well, to make sure that we are getting the best possible product for the people of Cambridgeshire, if we are getting it. We obviously will not be the ones to decide, but we do need to make sure that we shape it as far as possible, and to make sure that it is the best that it can be. I really do reflect on the concerns of people that are being passed by with East West Rail and yet not seeing any of the benefits of it currently. And I think we desperately need to be pushing East West Rail to make sure that there are benefits realised for everyone along the path of it, if it is to take that path at all. I think that is incredibly important. I was also at a meeting last week that did have representatives from East West Rail present, and I pushed them again on their land information questionnaires, because right now they have now published rough postcodes of where those are going to be, but I think we would all like to see more detail of exactly what they're doing. And I do understand their position that they are in, that they had planned to be out to statutory consultation by this stage, at which point there would be a lot more detail in the public domain. But I think that there is a large amount of uncertainty around that right now, and I would really call on the East West Rail Company to put as much out in the public domain as they feel comfortable to be able to do, bearing in mind that it is going to be a while now, obviously, before the statutory consultation comes out, and that will lead to much concern from residents along the affected areas. So we really do need to be getting them to publish as much as they can to assuage any concerns, or to help residents shape this going forwards. On that note, though, I'll obviously be supporting this because I do believe it, but the committee is recommended to endorse the position set out in this report and note the latest information updates on the East West Rail project. Delegate authority to the Executive Director of Place and Sustainability, in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Highways and Transport Committee, to submit the Nationally Significant Infrastructure Project, or NSIP, related responses to both the applicant and the planning inspector on behalf of the County Council. And C, note that where delegated powers are used, draft responses will be sent to local members and the members of the Highways and Transport Committee ahead of submission to the Planning Inspectorate. I don't believe I've seen any discontent there, so can I take that by affirmation? Wave your hand now if you don't agree with them. Okay, so that is passed. Thank you very much. Item 10 is one that I will know will be close to the heart of some members here, which is a report on the A1421, the traffic management and road safety options. And Am I right? Is Sonia able to join us? I know Sonia has COVID. Sonia will be joining us, I believe, remotely to introduce that report. So if we can get Sonia into the room via the magic of Zoom, let's hear from Sonia.
Hello. Hi. Thank you, Chair. Sorry not to be there in person. This paper is to respond to the full council motion from Councillor Bill Hunt in relation to the A1421 road safety concerns. The paper covers the road safety issues and gives an update on progress on the International Road Assessment Programme. The paper also covers the progress on active travel and the work being undertaken by Councillor Bill Hunt and the Parish Council on further traffic calming measures and working towards possibly introducing a weight limit. There's detail about the issue about declassification of the road and the implications of doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. And it's great that the magic of technology works and allows you to join us while you're ill, although do rest up, please, and make sure that you get better. Members, do we have anything we want to say on this? I'm going to look to Councillor Hunt first, given that I obviously ignored him last time around. So, Councillor Hunt, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. The business of road safety is absolutely vital to me in my division. My division goes from Soham to Erith Bridge. So effectively it goes along this 1123, and it's an old road that's been there, I suspect, for over 1,000 years. And there's a perfectly good newish road, which is a series of bypasses that could take the traffic. So what we do with one village helps 3 or 4 more. So if you reduce the traffic speed and volume in Hadnam, you help the residents of Streatham, Wilburton and Wicken, to a certain extent Soham. So I put forward quite a dramatic move to move the A1123 from an A to a B under the old administration, and that passed. The new administration took over in 21, and they decided, or it was decided, that this wasn't going to continue because the reduction in the money from central government was going to be a lot. I then thought, when I came back into this council, that it would be possible to degrade or declassify the A1421, which just goes from Hadnam to Witcham Toll, and that would then also have a knock-on good effect on the villages which I've just told you about. And the cost of degrading that road was, I'm told, £30,000. Well, quite honestly, you wouldn't have to have many heavy goods vehicles not using that road to save that amount on maintenance. I would point out that the electoral divisions, it is all of this road, with the exception of a junction right at the end, is actually in the Hadnam division, or the Soham South and Hadnam. Very, very little of it is in the Sutton division. However, when it came back to this council, I had the support of the member from Sutton, and and this was getting on nearly a year ago. I'm an old cynic, and I thought this might end up getting kicked down the road, and therefore, for that reason, I've been sort of keeping my sights and the focus on this particular thing. I am disappointed that we're looking now, despite the promises of having a report by this meeting today, but all the 3 recommendations are just note the options, note the progress, and note the options. I really beg people have been killed on this short stretch of A road. It is, if you go there, and the vice chair has been and seen, I drove him round and showed him the road, so he's fully aware of it. The main road, the A1123, which is the old road, is unsuitable for heavy goods vehicles, and a great deal has been achieved by working in cooperation, particularly with the Hadnam Parish Council, and there's very shortly a meeting coming up with officers and the Huntingdon Parish Council and myself within the next few days. However, I would urge, please, to have a firm action so options could come to this committee at our next meeting, which I think is in the 1st of October. And I would like to make it not just note, which I suspect isn't controversial, but also to have options that are clear options by the 1st of October, so that this committee can look at it and say, yes, that's a good idea, or that's a bad idea, and get some movement going on. And I would just urge that we do and add that. I have a proposal that on the 1st of October, there are solid proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. I'm just going to abuse my position as chair here for 1 second. I hope the committee will be okay to ask you a slight follow-up question. I know you're very keen on downgrading from A to B roads. Now, as far as, and obviously you mentioned that the loss of money of 30,000 per year, which is what, about 1,000 potholes being filled. What is it that you, Councillor Hunt, see downgrading from an A to B to actually achieve? Because it doesn't actually change any sat-navs. It doesn't suddenly limit people from being able to go down the road. It doesn't actually change. So what is it that going from an A to B, in your mind, actually achieves?
I think apart from anything else, we suffer from quite a lot of ex-Felixstowe heavy goods vehicles. The local heavy goods vehicles are mainly conforming and behaving, and they live locally and they work locally with the local parish councils. But it's the continental heavy goods vehicles coming from Felixstowe that come. Okay. And my belief is if they saw a B road on their sat-navs, in the long term, they would avoid that road, which is unsuitable, so as the Vice Chair knows.
I totally understand that, and I totally appreciate the problem with heavy goods vehicles traversing through communities. Obviously, sat-navs send you down a route. You don't pick the A or B road, and if anybody follows sat-navs, you'll find they often take you down some deeply inappropriate routes. At times, to save as little as 30 seconds, you'll be taken down a very inappropriate. So do you actually believe then, Councillor Hunt, that people would look at their sat-navs and then decide to not go the way that it
stopped heavy goods vehicles in Wilburton and other villages, and seen as a large amount of them have still got maps on there in the middle of their cabs, and they're looking at the roads which are marked up A's and B's. And that surprised me, but there are quite a lot of them still using maps.
Yeah, I have to admit, I thoroughly believe that the changing it from an A to B would have no effect in that case, and that actually what we need to be doing is lobbying the sat-nav operators, and I think that's the effective way to be able to do this. But thank you very much for that clarification, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Daunton, sorry, Councillor Hunt, do you want to turn your microphone off? There you go. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm particularly interested in this as a former member of the HGV working group, which devised their current policy, but also because we have particular issues in my division. In terms of what Councillor Hunt has just been saying about the some of the traffic coming down, I understand that Huntingdon has a very active, very effective lorry watch. So presumably they would be the lorry watch would be picking up what is local traffic and what is not local traffic. One would hope so. And again, I just come back to the point that the chair has made about what effect would the downgrading have on any traffic, whether it was local or international. I'm not sure that would be the case. My question to Councillor Hunt through you, Chair, is are there any access issues here? Is any of the traffic coming through on these roads going to local businesses, and this is the only route that they can choose?
Of course, some of the lorries live in the area and come in and out, and of course people have customers, where they're delivering something and picking it up. So yes, but that is all recorded and
Give us 1 second. I think we lost your audio slightly there, Councillor Hunt, but I think all of us in the room heard it. It looks like your microphone might have crashed. We'll see if we can get you a microphone. Councillor Daunton, did you want to come back?
Yes, I do want to come back. And also want to come back on the issues that Councillor Hunt pointed out that the report is note. But in fact, actually, there are actions going on at the moment. There are speed reduction measures and other actions going on which need to take their course. So we're simply noting what's happening at the moment. I actually think that quite a lot of work is going on. And I'm sure that when that work is completed, we'll see another report with the effect of that work.
Thank you, Councillor.
if I might, Chair, if we, I accept what you're saying, but I'm just concerned that there's no end to this road, and I'd like to see an answer. So could we have another report coming in on the next meeting, which I don't think is until the 1st of October?
Councillor Hunt, that's not how we do agenda planning for this one. I'm sure you're aware that as per the Constitution, that comes via spokes and we discuss it that way. As I've said on many, many occasions, that's how we do it. So I'm afraid I wouldn't be willing to take that now from here. If you want to bring it in via your spokes, we can discuss whether that would be appropriate or not. Actually, Councillor Hunt, can you turn your microphone off, please? You're still on. Thank you very much. One thing I do think, I really recognise the issues on this road, and having spoken to the local residents and driven the road myself, I really understand that we do need to do things to try and help it. But I'm also very aware that I often have many, many other residents from across the county coming in with similar issues with lorries, similar issues with speeding traffic. You know, we get this all the time, and it's important that we look at all of them and that we prioritize and go and make sure that we do them, you know, that they are done, and they are done according to who has the most significant issues, and that we do it in a logical, sensible way, rather than, and Councillor Hunt, I very much respect you for representing your constituents and raising the attention of this one, but we do obviously need to make sure that it's not just done by local members lobbying for their own area. We need to do it on a fair basis, which looks at a prioritized list of how we do things. So this one is very much being done, and I really appreciate the work that is being done on it, but we do need to make sure that we follow a process here by all of them. Now, sorry, I've got some more people. Councillor Daunton, do you want to come back? And then I've got Councillor Shea.
I do want to come back because this is a very important issue for me in my division. But more generally, I think it would be really helpful to take learning from this example, to take learning from what's happened in the past and the work that's going on with Sonia and her team now. And if we could take that more general learning and come back with that, that would be really helpful.
That sounds very sensible, Councillor Daunton. Councillor Shayler.
Thank you very much, Chair. In our work with the young farmers, we've had quite a few reports back of almost hostile behaviour towards farm traffic going through Haddenham. And you know what? This is one of the joys of living in a rural village, is that you actually have commercial operation from farmers that need to go through this route. I myself drive through Haddenham on a very regular basis lately, and it occurs to me my sat nav tends to send me all over the place depending on, you know, what's going on with the roads, and we need to see these things in a much broader view. There is a hell of a lot of traffic that gets shunted across through Haddenham and Wellingham that shouldn't be there, I think. One of the things is, of course, the Ely area enhancement. We could get some of those HGVs that come from further east across to stop running through there if they were actually on trains. But my own personal view is that if we improve the B1050 south, it might actually remove some of the traffic. There is traffic that is going from Fenland coming straight down towards the M11, and an enhancement of, for instance, the A10 corridor could make traffic through Haddenham even worse. So these are these kinds of wider views that we need to look at, I think.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shayler, and representing the people in that area, please try and go around if you can, rather than driving through their village all the time. Do I have? Oh, no, so Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think looking at looking at 3.7, obviously there is this meeting, looks like it's scheduled for Friday with Councillor Hunt and officers. I'd certainly welcome, I'll obviously pick something up at Spokes, as the chair quite rightly says, and take that forward. But it would be useful then to get some costed options coming forward on that, and touching on what Councillor Shayler has just said. Yes, the EDA area enhancement project would solve a lot of things. It might not solve foreign trucks who just come across the channel and use whatever route they're going to do. And it was something that was touched on yesterday at the Transport Infrastructure Committee, where there was some funding was moved around, because a lot of this bit north of the A14 are quite often big trucks trying to find alternative routes because there's an issue wherever. Because if you come down on the A142 into Newmarket, there is always onto where the A142 joins the A14, which is just into Suffolk. And that junction is actually technically in Suffolk, just across the border. There are always issues there in traffic. So it's not just this road. This road is very important, and Councillor Hunt will carry on, I'm sure, holding the torch for getting this improved. But it's looking at a lot of the issues that are intertangled around those particular villages, which we need to protect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. You are indeed right there, and I think that's why I'm concerned about the downgrading of the road, because what I don't want is lip service. What I would actually like is action that makes a difference, and I think it's really important that whatever we do here makes a difference and isn't just simply tokenism. So I think that's really important. Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. I think that the request for a further report sooner rather than later is not an unreasonable one, and I'm glad to hear that Councillor Sharp is going to pursue that in the appropriate forum. I'm a bit concerned with paragraph 5.1, and again it's repeating that declassifying it from A to B alone would not necessarily have the desired impact of traffic calming. I'd like to see a bit more evidence rather than just these bald statements. And I also a bit concerned that it is not recommended to progress declassifying the road at this time, but to allow time for further development and implementation of traffic calming measures. Now that seems to contradict to some extent the recommendations, because recommendations are about preparing a further report about the options, and that seems to suggest what I just read out, that we're ruling out declassifying without actually having the options in front of us. So I think that I have some concerns about this, and I think that we shouldn't take declassifying off the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. I do come back again to the whole declassifying. What are you seeking to achieve it other than tokenism? Of it doesn't change the sat navs, it doesn't stop people from using it, it does nothing to reduce the impact of those things. All it does is change the letter from an A to a B, and I fundamentally do not see what benefit that is. It loses its money, and it does not change the sat navs. I actually think that the options are far more important, the engaging with sat nav companies to see how we can get them to actually alter the sat navs, rather than simply hoping that a letter change changes things. I mean, I used to live on a C road in Cambridge that was horrifically trafficked and very, very busy. And I will note there that the fact that it was a C made not a single jot of difference to the lorries that were using it all the time. Most lorry drivers do not look at the letter of a road. They look at what the most direct route is. And that's most of us do. We look at what's the shortest journey time, what saves us the most money. Lorry drivers are all about trying to get there as quickly as possible because time is money. And haulage, and I very much respect that fact. So we do just need to be careful that we are looking at improvements that will actually make a difference rather than just tokenism. And I think that's incredibly important. Anyway, Councillor Shaler.
Can I just come back on that, Chair, if I may? I'm not saying that we ought to just rush into declassifying, but I'd just like some more information upon whether declassifying has an impact rather than just anecdotal evidence that it doesn't. I would also add that sat-navs have become increasingly sophisticated over the years, and I think that HCBs have their own dedicated sat-navs. So that's worth investigating as well to see if that might help with the declassification argument. Thank you.
Yes, again, on the dedicated sat-nav, so that's where we need to look at advisory freight routes, because those do start to feed and be working with the companies that, again, it's not down to the road number, it's where it is. Anyway, Councillor Shaler.
Thank you very much. Just briefly, and I wanted to thank Councillor Hunt for taking me around the area. And initially, I didn't appreciate just how long that urban route is. And in many parts of the county, we're looking for bypasses or other ways of dealing with these kind of problems. And I think it was right to highlight it. And we will continue to look at various different options. So, and please keep bringing these kinds of things to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's bring this one to a close then, unless I see anybody being really desperate to speak. Is that a desperation, Councillor Gardner? Go on, please keep it short because we are overrunning quite a lot.
It's very short. Just to say that in my division, I have a B road that takes all the HGV traffic rather than the A1307 and the A141. And, you know, we cannot get the traffic off the B1043, which I've been in contact with officers, you know, but it just by changing from A to B will not necessarily get rid of the traffic. But that's just a point locally, just outside this office.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gardner, and I'm glad I let you speak there. Thank you very much. Okay, so the committee is recommended to note the options set out in this report for the A1421, including declassification, note progress made on an international road assessment program analysis, and C, note the options of traffic timing measures set out in 3.8 of this report. Anybody against? Against? Okay, you're for, Councillor Hunt? Yes, anyone for? Okay, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. I was just pointing out that I am concerned about the progress. I hope it will continue, but I'm the sort of thing that on 3.1, where it says a report will be published in June 2024, and then we're in July now.
This was about the voting. We're about to vote.
But I wanted to get the point in, and just to say that why my concerns are that I want to keep this at the top of the pile.
But so you're not saying that you're going to vote against it, though. That was my question. And you did originally put your hand up, say you were going to vote against it, but I'm assuming that's not the case. So can I take it by affirmation that we pass this? Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Let's try and get through. We're getting there on things.
Chair, can I just echo your good wishes towards Sonia to get well
yes,
soon?
and
thank you.
If Sonia is still watching, Sonia, get well soon. Thank you very much. Rest up. And to everyone else that's suffering from COVID at the moment, there's a lot of it going around. So stay safe out there, everyone. Right, let's move on. Thank you, Sonia. So the next one on my list is the Finance Monitoring Report of 2023-24, and it'll be presented by Stephen Howarth. Stephen, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This report presents the management accounts for the Place and Sustainability Directorate, of which services in this committee's remit are a large part for the financial year 2023-24. So running through briefly, on the revenue budget, while the Directorate overall had an overspend, highways and transport services, which are identified in the report in particular, saw additional income collected from street works and highways development management charging, giving an overall positive variance of £1.8 million against the net budget of £23 million. Some services, including highways maintenance, saw a small overspend due to increased activity and costs, but this was more than offset by mitigations and particularly that income that I referenced. Savings delivery for services in highways and transport was generally good for the year, shown in the savings tracker in the report. On the capital programme, mirroring the position of the Directorate overall, highways and transport capital budgets underspent by around £27 million for the year, though much of that is slippage, or though much of that slippage is allowed for in the overall net capital budget. The main report sets out scheme by scheme in Appendix 3 the cause of each variance, but generally is delayed spend is expected to take place in a later year. In some cases, late announcements of government fundings made it harder to spend allocations. Underspends generally were concentrated in schemes funded by borrowing, which has a revenue benefit to the council in the short term. But I'll leave the introduction there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, members. Do I have any questions or comment? Councillor Daunton.
Yes, please. Well, congratulations to Streetworks for bringing in more money and their good work. My question is on page 133, and I might be completely misunderstanding this. So under footways, there was an underspend on structural footway programme. And so there is a saving and the money will roll into 24-25. Does that mean that we will be able to have more footway repairs in 24-25? Or am I misunderstanding that?
I mean, there will be that the budget allocated that wasn't spent will be rolled forward. So there will be more work done in a later year. But overall, over the scheme as a whole, it will be the same amount done. It's just the phasing that is affected.
Okay, so that means that we can't put forward more footpaths to be repaired. I think that's what you're saying, isn't it? Sad.
I think it's
Thank
saying
you.
that the ones that were already previously put forwards will now be done, but slightly later. Thank you. Sorry, did I see a hand? Yes, go.
Well, just Stephen, I wonder if you could clarify the rolling forward that Claire's referred to. Won't that expenditure be in a year which is now more expensive because of inflation and the like? And therefore, in practice, we might actually be able to do less work rather than the same amount of work, and certainly not more work.
All things being equal, that probably is the case, although there are many factors that do affect the cost. I'm not sure, for example, some of the orders of the contracts might have already been let for this. It might just be a matter of some of the work slipping from late in last financial year into early this financial year, for example. Some of that might be covered in the next item as well, where the roll forwards are presented.
Thank you very much there. I do think it's probably important to point out that the weather this year, I know that will come from the next report, has been very bad. That might cause us some issues coming up. But Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. As my wife never tires of reminding me that accountancy did not lose a great talent when I didn't choose that as a career option. So these are probably really stupid questions, but I'm going to ask them anyway. The first one relates to page 128. And there's a line there that says Wisbech Town Centre Access Study. I'm not familiar with that. I'm aware of the Wisbech Access Study, but not the Town Centre Access Study. So I'd like to just know what that is. And I'd also like a bit more narrative on that one if Stephen can provide it. So can I come back with my other two questions so I don't lose the thread of my thought? But that would be great, Stephen. Thank you.
Go on then. I'm not sure if Stephen's the right one to answer that one either. I don't know whether any other officers. Okay, sounds like it might just be a terminology. I will get officers to clarify that though and let you know. Next.
I have often asked questions about the Wisbech Access Study, so it's just continuing that one. The other question that I had was, I don't see a line, and I might have missed it. Perhaps Stephen can help with this, about the weed spraying program.
My recollection of that is was there a saving in around weed spraying? Yep. So it's in the saving. The reference it was agreed in the business plan for 23-24 as a saving, saving BR 6.2.218, which is on page 139 within the savings tracker. So it's part of the revenue budget, and that is where the progress against that saving is reported.
It's just important to point out that that is obviously being reversed. So this is last financial year, not current financial year, and that has been reversed for this financial year.
So my wife was right after all. The final question I have, which I've often asked before, is I don't see any information about vacancies in this report, or have I missed that? because I always find that really useful and a very good indicator of whether we're delivering.
Different report, Councillor King, different report. That's usually reported in the performance report, not the finance report.
Okay. So again, my wife was proved right on that one too. And this is my final request, is just looking at the format, and this is particularly to cater for those of us who are challenged from an accountancy point of view. I would like a bit more narrative about what are the issues that our officers are concerned about, either in terms of underspend or overspend. So a bit more narrative in future reports, I personally would find really helpful. And, you know, on other things that I sit on, there's a traffic light system. And I'm not saying that we ought to go for that, but just something that indicates to people like me that what we should be worried about.
Noted, Councillor King. I'm sure that could be taken up at a corporate level as to.
Bill, do you agree with that one as well?
And I would say, having met your wife, please do listen to your wife. She is very sensible. Anybody else? Councillor Sharp.
I'm supposed to agree with that, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, finance is one of my talents. I'm sure there are other talents you've got that I haven't. So, yes, just a couple of things. I'll pick this up with officers outside, obviously looking at the capital underspend and going forward to try and sort of see that, because it relates into next year. And I'll mention this just as well, is that it's always been, and when I was in the civil service, it was the same, that civil government and local government always show underspends as minuses, whereas from a commercial sector, a minus is always a red flag. So it's always been done the wrong way round, but I'm sure it's going to carry on forever. I've got used to it, others haven't. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Yes, the pluses and minuses of local government. There are many. Councillor Daunton.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question. Page 130, number 1B, the local infrastructure improvements. I'd just like to have an example of what you mean by local infrastructure improvements, and just a bit more explanation about what is going on here.
I may need to defer to one of my colleagues at the other end of the table on that one.
And while we're looking around, maybe we can get back to you on that one, Councillor Daunton. I'm aware in these finance tables, they hide an awful lot of very specific detail. And getting that is really important.
I'd be very grateful if somebody would get back to me on that, and the underspend and what's going to happen to the underspend. Thanks.
Definitely agree with that. Also, I'm just going to note it here that officers are probably going to hate me. A lot of work has been done recently on local projects and producing what I think David calls Pokemon cards that outline the status of the projects and where they're up to, and gives really good facts and figures. I'm hoping we'll be at the point soon where we can share those, because that does really give a lot more detail on all of these projects that I'm sure we'll all find really useful. And it's in the service update already, so that's good. So please do go check out the Pokemon cards. They will give you a lot more detail on all the projects that you are interested in.
Be patient, Chair.
Brilliant. Anybody? Councillor King again.
This is not a question, it's just a thank you to officers, because a couple of things that I have found really helpful recently is the updates on the LHIs that have been going out, and that's really good. And it'd be great if we could look at other areas where we can do those updates as well. So well done, officers.
Thank you. Sorry, David, yes.
I think on the 11th of July, we circulated the service update covering the whole range of activities across the service. And I've had some good feedback about how helpful that is. So we'll continue circulating that on a monthly basis.
I would encourage members, if you haven't read the service update, to go look at it and look at the links that are off it. You are right, those Pokemon cards are there. And I will just take 30 seconds to say thank you to David, Frank, and all the team, all the way down the organisation to the very coal front, for all the work that they are doing in service transformation. It is so incredibly important to all of us and to our residents. the other day I realised, sorry, this is really digressing, that highways, the budget for highways is the same as the entire city council, and I think we have about 10 million users of our network every year, which is a large number of people that highways is so important to. So thank you for the work that's being done, because it is so important to all of us. Does anyone else have anything on this, though? Should we move on to the, can I take this by affirmation that everyone agrees with the recommendations here? Hang on, let me read them out quickly. Note the Strategy and Resource and Performance Committee approved the capital carry forwards and reprofiling as detailed in Appendix 3 of the Finance Monitoring Report. Note the Strategy and Resource and Performance Committee. Oh, actually, sorry, I've gone on to the wrong one. The wrong one. Review and comment on the report. We've done that. Okay. Item 12, Finance Reporting Report for May 2024, presented by Stephen Howarth again. Stephen, sorry, next one.
Thank you. Yep, double hit at this time of year. So following on from the previous item, this report presents the first set of management accounts for the 24-25 financial year at period 2 or May. And given the early stage of the year, this will be a brief introduction again. So again, while the Directorate overall is forecasting an overspend for the year at this stage on the revenue budget, services in this committee's remit under highways and transport are again projecting additional income in excess of budget. It being early in the year, so we'll keep a close eye on actual income received to ensure that the forecast is accurate, but based on last year and recent trends, we think it's likely to happen this year and into the future budget. On the capital programme, an annual process is undertaken to fully review every capital scheme at the start of the financial year to look at expected phasing and funding sources. Strategy, Resources and Performance Committee agreed the consequent budget changes from this refresh for the whole council at its last meeting, and they're presented for this committee to look at in 3.4 of the main appendix. Finally, the covering report for this sets out 3.54 increases to capital scheme budgets, fully funded by ring-fenced external contributions that were also agreed recently by SRP committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions? No? Okay. In that case, then I will read it again. The committees recommend to note the Strategy, Resource and Performance Committee approved the carry forwards reprofiling as detailed in Appendix 3 of the Finance Monitoring Report. B, note the Strategy, Resource and Performance Committee approved the additional budget funding as set out in paragraph 3.5 of this report. And C, review and comment on the report. Can I take that by affirmation? Brilliant. No disagreement there. Okay, the final item on the agenda is the committee's agenda plan and appointments. Firstly, are there any updates to the agenda plan from officers or comments from members? Nick, anything from you? Nope. Okay, nothing else, and we will take via spokes the usual process. Could the Democratic Services Officer present appointments to any committees to make?
Thanks, Chair. Yep, the appointments are listed in appendices 2, 3 and 4 for outside bodies, internal groups and member champions, and the proposed appointments are set out there in the report.
Brilliant. In that case, then, the committee is next due to meet on the 3rd of September 2024. Councillor King.
Just two things on appointments, Chair. First one is, I just want to say thank you very much for reappointing me onto the A47 group, which is very important for the area that I represent. And the other suggestion is perhaps we ought to look at having some substitutes on the LHI panels, because I know that officers very often find it quite difficult to fill those panels.
We can take that away and look at it. Yes.
Well, I agree entirely with that comment from Simon, and also note that we have 2 vacancies on the Huntingdonshire LHI panel, according to this table in Appendix 3. One for Lib Dems and one for Independents. And I would suggest that we need to fill those.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Duly noted. We will look at filling those. Anything else? Councillor King, can you turn your microphone off if you're Councillor King? Microphone. Oh, that's right. Councillor Sharp, sorry, you just indicated it very briefly.
Yeah, just one point, and I know I've mentioned it at Spokes, is the A141 and St Ives group. I know Councillor Wilson's on it, so but in terms of looking at local members on that group, it would be useful. We'll pick it up in Spokes. Yeah,
okay, we'll pick that up in Spokes with exactly there. In that case, then, if there's nothing else, this committee meeting is next due to meet on 3rd of September, and I declare it closed. Members, if you could stick around for a few minutes afterwards, though, we have something else we need to discuss. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.